Yeah, earlier it was backwards. What was it? That's what. Sure, whatever you want. Logitech.
That's where they took the eight.
For some reason, when he did that, we don't really want to mess with anything in here because it's set. I really don't mess with anything.
Say I'm going to leave back to you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome everyone. We appreciate you being here. We'll go ahead and call this meeting order. We'll begin with invocation by Reverend Bob Deardorff. Are you in here, Paul? Bob Deardorff in? Bob Deardorff. Andrew, could you take that for us?
Yep. God, we'd like to thank you for allowing us all to be here tonight and to be able to gather and to be able to talk about the issues that are concerning our cities this evening. And I would ask that you guide us with wisdom and the ability to see the right decisions as we try to make them tonight. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Here. Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Lucas.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Hammond.
Here.
Reaper.
Here.
Ostendorf.
Here. Okay, the current copy of the Open Meetings Act in Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. For those that may have a copy of your agenda, tonight's agenda, I would like to draw your attention to the meeting procedures, and I'll just read those very quickly. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please state your name and address and limit remarks to 3 minutes or less. Out of respect to the city employees, we request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or mayor. An individual in violation will be declared out of order. Before we get started on our regular agenda tonight, I do have the privilege of, well, first of all, I'd like to introduce you to two new police officers here in North Platte, Officers Stephen Keck and Shad Newton. Yeah, if you can hang out there for just a second, I got plenty to say. These two young officers just graduated from the 202nd Basic Class from the Nebraska Law Enforcement Training Center on August 23rd. Officer Newton was selected as the most outstanding recruit for the 202nd Basic Class. We're going to deliver the oath this evening. And as a result of that, the pinning of the badge on Officer Keck is his mother, Cindy Keck. Are you in the audience, Cindy? Oh. And father, Steve Keck. Pinning his badge on Officer Newton is his wife, Mandy Newton, and son, Jacob Newton. All right. Gentlemen, if you could meet me up here in the center. I guess so we can see guys. I'm going to stand there and look here so everybody can see. All right. We're going to administer the oath of office. If you would both please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I say your name.
I, Chad Newton,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
and the Constitution of the State of Nebraska
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely and without mental reservation
and that I take this obligation freely and without mental obligation
or for the purpose of evasion,
or for the purpose of evasion,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of the City of North Platte
that I will faithfully and impartially perform the duties as police officer for the City of North Platte
according to law and to the best of my ability.
according to law and to the best of my ability.
And I do further swear that I do not advocate,
And I do further swear that I will not advocate,
nor am I a member of any political party or organization
nor am I a member of any political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States,
or of this state by force or violence,
or of this state by force or violence,
and that during such time as I am in this position,
during such time that I am in this position.
I will not advocate
I will not advocate
nor become a member of
nor become a member of
any political party or organization
any political party or organization
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States
that advocates the overthrow of the government of the United States,
or of this state by the force or violence.
or of this state by force of violence.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
We need to pin
We need to pin these guys.
some
Yeah.
badges on it.
Badges, mom and dad, the Newtons, where are you? Come on up. Oh, come on up over there.
Keep going up.
You're welcome, partner. You can come up. Shake your dad's hand. Not too hard. Not yet. Good job. Awesome, thank you. Did you get your pictures, George? Thank you, everyone. Chief, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Roy.
Okay, we'll begin with the consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. Item number 1, approved minutes of August 20th, 2019. Item number 2, place on file ML&W reports for July 2019. Item number 3, place on file treasurer's report for July 2019. Item number 4, approve application by North Platte Community Playhouse for a special designated license on September 27, 2019 from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. September 28, 2019 from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. and September 29, 2019 from 5 to 12 a.m. at the Fox Theater, Patty Bird's Room, 01 East 5th Street, North Platte, Nebraska for a fundraiser / live stage show. And item number 5, accept lease proposal and authorize the mayor to sign the acceptance document and lease purchase documents with U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Financing for one 2014 Vector 2100 Plus jet back truck for use by the Public Service Department in a total amount of $179,000. Item number 6, authorize mayor to execute interlocal agreements for advanced life support ambulance service with area basic life support services. Item number 7, accept bid and authorize mayor to sign contract for sewer improvement district number 348 along East 6th Street and Welch Avenue and water extension district number 263 along the west side of 18th Avenue and Emory Avenue. And item number 8, adopt recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission for preliminary final approval of McDonald Place replat located at 804 West F Street. And item number 9, adopt recommendation by the North Platte Planning Commission for a preliminary final approval of Gadsden First subdivision located at 805 Pelican Drive.
Move to approve items 1 through 9 of the consent agenda.
And that motion passes. On the regular agenda, I'd like to move item number 18. Item number 18 is Joy Gilman in the audience.
Yes, Mayor.
If you all don't mind, I'd like to move that up to the first spot and move forward with it. And so we'll go with it. Item number 18 is conduct a hearing and take action on appeal by Joy Gilman relative to her receipt of notice to repair or demolish property damage by fire at 1419 Rodeo Road, North Platte, Nebraska.
Mayor, I would move that we table this motion. The reason is that we would have to have a hearing on this. It'll take a little bit of time, and there's a lot of other matters on this agenda tonight. We may be here till late, and I think it would be better for everyone involved to do this at the next council meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we ought to go ahead.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. I think we ought to go ahead with it, that's my opinion. Here tonight.
Jim, it's not, all it is because all the stuff we have going on tonight is going to be, if we do it, it'll be at the very end. We may be 10 o'clock. You know, that's the reason I'm asking to do it. It's not to jeopardize her.
Oh.
It's just that it's going
Oh,
to be late
I'm sorry,
tonight.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's the reason why.
It might even benefit her.
Might even benefit her. That's the reason I'm doing it.
Well, he's wanting to move it up to the front here right now, so we can get it out of the way and we'll just keep working our way down. I don't know, we got her here this time and everything. I just would hate to have her come back and everyone else that's involved with it again. I'd rather just go through with it at this point.
Well, you know, it's going to be a hearing. We could be here 30, 45 minutes on this. That's all I'm suggesting. I think there are other matters here. These people are going to have to wade through that.
There's a motion and a second. We can certainly vote on this.
I think the motion is to table until the next meeting.
Next meeting.
Would I be able to touch on a couple of things that might be holding me up until the next meeting is cleaning and taking?
Ms. Gilman, why don't you step to the podium, please? Identify you, give your name and
My
address.
name's Joy Gilman. I'm at 1419 Rodeo Road. I've been there for 35 years. An arson caught my house on fire, and so I'm trying to clean it up as quickly as I can.
Ms. Gilman, the issue is whether or not at this point to table it until the next meeting. Do you have any objection to continuing this until the next meeting?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it? Okay.
Call the question.
And the motion passes 6-2.
Ms. Gilman, it's continued until the next city council meeting, which is the first Tuesday in, no, it's the second Tuesday in September.
Third.
The second meeting is the third. Contact me.
September 17th.
There you go, thank you. Joy, you're certainly welcome to stay, but you don't have to stay the rest of the evening now. We will see you again in a couple of weeks.
I'd like an agenda so I could see what you guys are talking about, because I probably have a few things I'd like to say on. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
It's
you very
item
much.
number 18 on the agenda. That's, that it's been continued.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Item number 10, public hearing on ordinance number 4014 to adopt a budget statement and to appropriate city monies for the fiscal year 2019 through 2020. No action taken until September 5th, 2019. This is a public hearing if anyone wishes to speak, so you're welcome to.
Rich Reiner, 2602 Cedarberry Lane. I assume that the Iron Eagle Golf Course is in this ordinance.
Yes, sir.
As you have seen in the past several weeks, myself and two other gentlemen have sent letters to the editor and have been published with our concerns with the amount of money that is being issued and spent on this, as I call it in my letter, albatross for 25 years. And then I read the today's paper and see that you have upped that by 31.6%, which is $195,000 plus dollars. I'm at a loss as to where this is all going. I think Mr. Erickson set forth 7 pretty good questions in the paper last Friday about, what, where are these things going? Who's doing what? Why are these prices staying the same, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just, I don't belong to Iron Eagle. I never have. I belong to one of the other 3 private golf courses in the neighborhood of the city. We're struggling to make ends meet while Iron Eagle is spending tax dollars. I just have been lost as to why our city government is in competition with private enterprise. I was always under the belief that it was against the law, and I think Mr. Hawks told me at one time it is not. But I still think when you've got private enterprise struggling to make ends meet, and you have an entity within the city government that is in competition with those 3 other situations, and we've got an unlevel playing field. And then my feeling is that it's time to level the playing field if you're going to continue to operate this entity at a loss, as it has for the last 25 years. I've not talked to all of you city councilman, and I apologize for not getting to you before tonight, but I would have a question for you besides the 7 questions that Mr. Erickson proposed, is that, are you voting the will of your constituents, or are you voting your own personal feelings? Second question I have is, if a city councilman is employed by Iron Eagle, should that person recuse himself from voting when it comes time to vote on this situation?
May I answer that real quick? I am not employed by Iron Eagle.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I think that's about all I need to say. I hope that you take into account what I really would like to see this put on the ballot. Let the public decide. Public decided 25 years ago to try it. Hasn't worked for 25 years. Let the public decide whether they want to continue. Thank you.
And hey, Rich, I have you can stay up here for a second if you don't mind.
Sure.
When I read that editorial, I was actually out of town on the prices, that we haven't raised our prices for many years. That's totally incorrect. They were raised, I think, a year ago. And also, we're actually more expensive than Lake Maloney. And we're actually more expensive than Rabbit Run, Meadowlark. The only one I didn't get was our the River's Edge golf course. But
I don't know where Mr. Erickson got those figures.
well, I just wanted to correct everybody here, but that's
Okay.
incorrect
Sure.
information. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk, if I could ask a question. Where is the funds that allow people that, have disasters happen to their house, or arsons per se, or even the North Side
You're speaking
organization?
about your condition, are we talking that again?
No.
You're not on tonight.
No, I'm talking about, well, not just this condition, but like the blighted area, are there funds available that I don't know about for blighted area houses or
Ms. Gilman,
businesses?
come see me and I'll answer all of your questions.
Okay. I was just wondering about the TINF funds or whatever.
We're talking about the city's budget right now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. and-
Okay. Got you
and
then.
I'd be happy to answer all of your questions if you come see me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name's Steve Marshall. I live at 719 Griffith Avenue. I guess I question where that money that you're taking from, the municipal money, what exactly does that cover? How does that cover it? Why would that money be better used going to a golf course that has proven over time that it's not ever going to benefit? It's not going to go into the black without substantial help over and over. If the city wants to be in business, loan that money to the county and build a jail. You're going to get the interest back on it, at least make the money. At what point in time do you have to admit this golf course doesn't make money? As a city, we're not in business. We're not allowed to be in business. We have several streets this year that have proven to be under-equipped or, old, that they can't move the rainwater away. It's been an outrageous year for rain, but Oak Street, between Oak and Willow on 3rd in that area, was at least 6 times under a foot of water. Sewer, gray water was going in people's basements. I was over there cleaning it out time and time and time again. I know it's not the city's fault, but there's money there that could be spent. If you look at the budget, there's just a sliver of amount for sewer, for rainwater. So is there places in town that need to be inspected and see if they're up to standard? Could that money be used for that? Thank you.
I'm Chris Tyen, 1806 West 3rd. I guess, if you took this on a personal level, you were looking at your own budget and something kept coming up short in the budget, you'd probably get rid of that, I guess. I feel like we make big decisions with big money because, you know, it's, I mean, it is all of our money, but at the same time, it's easier to make decisions like that. So I guess I would just take a step back and think about it. You know, if this was a situation where you were dealing with a deficit at home personally, and you didn't have the money to pay for something, or you did, you know, what's the point of paying into something that is constantly losing money? And, you know, just like it was said numerous times, it doesn't look like it's ever going to be in the positive. So I guess I would just have you consider that.
Thank you, Chris.
My name is Dan Perlinger. I live at 2809 West 3rd Street. I am a member of Iron Eagle, a proud member of it. I'm a very poor golfer, but I love the golf course. It's very good shape. I'm also a member of another one around here. I won't mention the name. Iron Eagle is in very excellent shape. I understand it isn't making money, and people talk about it competes with other businesses. The city is in many things that compete with other businesses. The rec center, for one. I'd like to know, does anybody know in here how much the rec center costs us every year? I know that's an animal of a different whatever, but look it up, find out, do your research. I know what it is. It's a lot of money every year.
Is it?
And it's not as much, Iron Eagle isn't near as much every year as what the rec center costs. Look it up for yourselves and find out. There's many things the city does that I'm not in agreement with, but I'm not advocating to get rid of the rec center or any of the other businesses that city is in that competes with other businesses. I've been here for 30 years. I love this city. I really do. I moved here 30 years ago. You know, your taxes are your taxes. I pay them. I'm happy to pay them. But, you know, we've got one of the best golf courses around, and I think we should keep it. Thank you.
Dan?
Yes.
I apologize. I didn't get your address.
2809 West 3rd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Jerry Wilson, 1818 West 18th Street, and I'm here tonight to ask you folks to consider supporting the golf course if for no other reason that 2 weeks ago or a short time period ago, an individual representing a group of people come in and said that they would like to invest $10 million. And that's contingent upon the golf course being a golf course. And, you know, when they get done building all the retirement village or whatever they want to build, I can't imagine what that's going to do to our tax base, but certainly going to increase it. So the thing is losing money, the airport's losing money, but it's vital to us. So let's talk about the Iron Eagle being vital to a $10 million project. If nothing else, support it for at least a few years to see if this thing's going to go. If it doesn't, then revisit the issue. Okay? Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Wilson.
I agree. Thank you.
No.
Oh.
You probably won't. I read the material. I'm a volunteer on this myself, but you said that this new project is has a prerequisite of continuing with public golf. I'm not sure that's accurate. I think it's an important factor in the developer's mind, and I don't think that he said clearly that he would not move forward unless we get the golf course. Not what my agenda says here. That is a consideration.
Okay, I got my information from the public news media. It says it's vital to the project moving forward, if I remember
Can
correctly.
you clarify that for us, Mr. Buck?
Well, actually, we're going to probably hear from the gentleman who presented here a few weeks ago, but that was mentioned, Jim, as a consideration, as you said.
Consideration. Thank you.
Okay, so take that into consideration then. we have an opportunity for at least a $10 million project to come into North Platte to try to make it better, give us a bigger tax base. And if we don't move forward with the city, folks, it's going to stagnate and then we end up just dying. So let's give it a chance and see if we can make this thing work. Thank you, folks. And by the way, thank you, each and every one of you, for being in public office. You don't get the accolades you deserve, but you get more rocks than you do. Thank you. So thank you. Thank you.
My name is Donna Kahn. I live at 820 South Bryan Avenue. I would just like to say that when you read the paper, you read the talk back. And I've talked to a lot of people in town, and no one wants this golf course, except these two that just spoke tonight. It was like, really? As far as that project moving forward, contingent on the golf course, if they even consider that, stuff it to them, give it to them, let them run, see if they can make a profit on it. And the whole housing thing, I know that's not specifically what we're talking about here, but more houses in North Platte, over 55 or whatever. We have Eagle Estate sitting over there in 5 houses, 5 units out of 18 have not sold yet. And they were finished like in 2014. So I think North Platte already has enough drain on their budget that we don't need to continue with keeping the drain. We need to plug the hole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Woods, 902 North Emory. I think I'll talk about something else. Much like to talk about the golf course, but you know, I've kind of looked at the budget, and you know, I've just got a couple questions that some ideas maybe, like on the animal control. Is there any way we could privatize the, you know, the shelter area? Seems like there's so many dog and cat lovers that maybe somehow they could take that over. We'd still have our animal control officers. I mean, we'd have to have that, but you know, that might shorten the budget. And I like to read a lot, but you know, times are changing, and you know, I haven't even been in the library. I've talked about getting a card, and I really don't know what goes on down there, but I'm wondering if maybe we couldn't, you know, lower the payroll, you know, maybe do we need as many people as there are? Just saying, I don't know how many people work there or anything, but you know, just things like that. With the technology, I'm sure libraries aren't what they used to be. Yet.
Whenever you're done.
Oh, okay. Well, let me say a little something on the golf course. Something's got to be done. Everybody's upset. If you guys don't do it, I really think it should be put on the ballot. Okay, I'm done.
So on the library, I just want to say a couple things. Go check it out at some point in time. I think you'd find out they're doing a lot of things that aren't just book related. They've actually been cutting back on their books and reaching out to other communities. They have a really cool Make It Center that they've installed in there, which allows people from all different age groups, demographic groups, abilities to be able to go in there and make and create and start to use creative abilities. Really, libraries have transitioned more to learning centers. I think Cecilia, wherever she's hiding out in here, would probably agree to that we're working on that transition. And that's what's made libraries really successful. Overall, if you start including the amount of online offerings that our library has, combined with our foot traffic, you know, numbers are good there. There's a lot of people that are using that. And I'd say, Cecilia, Sarah, you guys probably confirm that. I think if you include the online numbers, I mean, our attendance at our library is rock solid.
Solid 300 to 500 people.
Wow.
We're open
Well,
6 days a
good.
week.
Well, like I said, I really you know.
I thought I was gonna take a chance to let you know, go down there and go check it out. I think you'd be surprised about the amount of people down there and the amount of good things that they're really working on down there.
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas, and I know a lot of them are, you know, I mean, good, but some are. Okay, well, I probably will go down and get a card. I can't afford to buy all the books. I like to read.
Yeah, Mark, I'm interested in your opinion. One thing, council, that's been interesting to me this year is that we're spending $1.2 million net roughly on the library. We're spending $600,000 or $700,000 on the rec center, spending $300,000 roughly on the cemetery. And these are all rough numbers. Don't quote me on them, anybody, but they're close. And why do you think the golf course is the item that people are so aggravated about? I've had no other adverse comments about any of those other services that you mentioned, but the golf course, my phone rings off the hook about. Walk me through your opinion of why that's issue number one to our citizens.
Well, I think, frankly, a lot of people don't play golf. And, you know, I'm in the middle class, and I am just taxed to death. You know, I can hardly, there's so much I'd like to do in my business, but, you know, there's just not the ability. So it kind of galls us that all this money, it could be fixing roads and taking care of other problems, is going to a business that's, and this is what really bugs me, is it's in competition with private enterprise. Guys who put their own money out there, and you know, they're paying taxes and all this. If they make a mistake, they can be out of business. Golf course, you know, I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. I had my own business once. If I had gone 2 years without making any money, I'd have been out of business. You know, I think most people just think the money could be spent better elsewhere. Then it'll probably be the rec center that pops up next.
If I may add something to what Ty just said, because I've been thinking the same thought. This is the first budget I've been through. Excuse me. And when I see what we're paying, you know, the budget for our library, which we need the library, don't get me wrong, and the rec center.
Oh, I agree.
It's huge. And I've got the numbers right here for the recreation department. I take that back, not just the rec center. Several other little items, but they brought in $674,000 last year. That cost the city $1.493 million. So we took $819,000 out of our general fund to recover that cost. But yet we're talking 150-some thousand for the golf course, and I'm like, wait a second. Simple math says we should be looking at the other thing. But again, don't take this the wrong way, because the city needs the recreation centers, the libraries. They need a affordable golf course for its citizens. We're not supposed to be in competition with the other golf courses. So it's the real issue that Al and his group is, they say it's taxes. It can't be. In 2017, sir, it was $12.86 a person for the whole year to recover the cost on the golf course. That's $1.04. We now have it paid off. We now have no landscapes at $60-some thousand a year. Mm-hmm. So I would anticipate that we're going to probably be paying less than 80 cents a dollar per month. And look what that investment could bring the city, up to $40 million in that vicinity if those three projects go. So I'm struggling with the fact that, are we looking at the right avenue? If we're looking at tax dollars, we should be going someplace else.
Well, if it's going to bring us in, how's it going to bring us in 40 million?
The potential is 40 million if all three projects.
Oh, you're talking about that. Well, you know what? I really think those will be built whether the golf course is there or not. You know, the one on Halligan Drive is two businesses. The warehouses have nothing to do with the golf course. So those two will be. And I like that, I said, make a deal with them and work the golf course in lieu of some of the TIF funds, so we get our property tax dollars quicker. You know, there's a lot of ways to go here. Chief seems to be a pretty good company. You guys all work with them. Well, Pearson and the TIF board probably more than others, but you know, there's a lot of ways to go. I'm not against the development, I really don't think the golf course, I mean, it'd be nice for them. I agree. I would think they could work out some kind of a deal there, maybe. You know, probably what's worse is it's the 3.25 million you're doing this year. You know, just boom, all at once. It's a big number too. So that's kind of but like I say, with me, and this is only me, it's a personal thing. I don't think the government, I know you guys say you're in competition with everything, the rec center and all that, but this is one place where we definitely don't have to be. Golf numbers are going down. If one golf course is going to go away, I'd rather see it be the municipal, so the other three guys don't lose their shirt.
Okay, Mark, thank you for your time. We went,
Okay.
we went way over it. It's not your fault, but there may be some other people who'd like to speak. Yes.
I think you mentioned something like that you don't hear a lot of complaint about the golf course.
No, I hear, you know, frankly, I think this council's got to start taking the citizens' concerns way more seriously. I mean, we can barely get a venue to talk about the golf course in this group, and it is the #1 complaint I hear. And so as much as I get Jim's point that if you compare it to other city services, the gross outlay is not as much. I mean, I think our operating net loss is projected in the $222,000 range, but there's a reason everybody's upset about this and continues to be over and over. And I don't know, I don't think we're smarter than our constituents on this one. And not to say we ever are, but I think this council needs to be paying attention to the volume of contacts and concerns we continually hear about this golf course.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Gosh, I feel like we've been beating this thing.
Jim, we are in a public hearing, and there are people
I
who
want,
want to
I'm
speak.
still asking a question.
If you would be so kind.
I'm asking a question.
Who are you asking?
I'm sorry?
Who are you asking the question of?
I'm gonna ask a question of Mr. Benson. I might have forgotten. I think I might have forgot what I was gonna ask you, Jim. In any interest of moving this on, yes, thank you, I will. Let the public speak.
Thank you, Jim.
Terry Woods, 902 North Henry. Thank you for hearing all of us. It was my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me if I am, that when we all voted for the golf course, that it was never to be, you have taxpayer money involved with it. That it was to be run on its own and no tax dollars would support it. Well, if that's the case, then we've ventured far off that path. And to the tune of $3 million that we're putting in to bring it up to zero than whatever we're budgeting now in the general fund. So it will now become a permanent part of our tax base in the general fund. Am I correct? Yeah, okay. It's just too much. We can't get our streets fixed. I can't get a sidewalk or a storm sewer in my neighborhood. Our street's been on the 1 and 6 year road plan for 30 years. That's ridiculous. If we didn't have a golf course to support, and we weren't giving it $3 million, I might get a street. Some of the other streets in town would get fixed. We'd have money to do the upkeep on the rec center, which is in sore need of improvements. And I noticed that their budget has decreased. So are we just not going to fix it? We're just going to let it go into disrepair until we just scrap it and build a new one? I just don't get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Howard Mendonca, 2920 West 4th Street. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for your public service. I do agree with the gentleman, you do get more rocks and accolades, so thank you for your public service. I am an avid golfer and try to golf as much as I can. I have been a member of Iron Eagle on and off over the 20 years I've been in town.
And I think Ty hit it right on the head. I'm not sure why the city wants to be in competition with private industries. A few years back, we had the Y try to come to North Platte. For whatever reason, we turned them away. We have several golf courses that are struggling. I mean, struggling to make ends meet. But it seems like Iron Eagle, no matter how many years it struggles, the city always bails them out. It was my understanding that 2 or 3 years ago, it was leased out to a private company, I believe out of Lincoln or somewhere. I'm not sure what happened to that. I'm not sure why we're not going that avenue. But everyone's right here. 3.2 million to an avid golfer is ridiculous. And I think the question was brought up, why you get beat up so much about the golf course? Probably because maybe 3% of the city, 4% of the city plays golf. Should we put more money in the rec center? Sure. I mean, I imagine 30% of the city, 20 to 30% of the city goes to the rec center. You know, kids, swimming pool, stuff like that. So I agree with most of the people here that it does need to be on the ballot. Thank you.
Howard, we didn't get your last name.
Mendonca, Mendonca. Thank you.
Good evening. Ginger 804702 Valley Drive. I'll speak to the golf course as well. I'm not really in favor of us spending this much money for it, simply because when you look at the ethical theory of you just, whatever that one is, where most thank you, as ethics class in college failed me there. But where it serves the most amount of people for the happiness. The rec center or our recreational needs far outweigh that of what we have in golfers. The amount of golfers that we have here are not enough to sustain Iron Eagle. We have so many other areas within the community when we're talking just recreation, just because those two lie so closely together, that are in desperate need of help. I believe you guys should have gotten an email from somebody here in town who sent a bunch of pictures of playgrounds to you today that are in extreme disrepair. They have pieces of slides coming apart, chains on swings coming off to keep kids from coming in. These are very, very big concerns for us parents when we want to take our kids to playgrounds. We can't have this because we're afraid of them being hurt in some other way. So the rec center is able to at least keep them safe. We don't really take them golfing a lot of times, but we need to look at other things. We need to look at other recreational needs within the community that this money that we're putting away for Iron Eagle can be better used for. If it is for the streets, fine, but you know, let's look at recreation. Our trails need help. Our recreation center needs help. Our softball fields need help. Our soccer fields need help. Everything needs help. And especially when you start to look at other county entities that are actually having to fund these enterprises, like the resurfacing of tennis courts, there's an issue here. So I would strongly urge you guys to consider putting this on the ballot so that we, the community, can actually decide what needs to be done with this. I understand if, you know, it's, if you can't or you don't want to, let us decide. Okay. Thank you.
Ginger, I'm sorry, I didn't get your address.
4702 Valley.
4702 Valley.
Valley Drive.
Thank you.
Amy Taft, 2217 West Ninth. I wasn't going to speak, but after listening to everybody, I just kind of felt the need to voice my concerns. And I think, Mr. Lucas, you have said it, and a couple of you have chimed into the same. You are here as a board member to serve your constituents. I serve on a board, and we speak for them. We don't speak for ourselves. And you've said that this is your biggest complaint. If this is the biggest complaint that you gentlemen are getting, then maybe your answer is right in front of you. Maybe we are telling you enough's enough. I agree with the playgrounds. We do not in this town have one single playground that is handicap accessible, that is inclusive. I know that I hear it's not true, but it is very true. I have a son who is special needs. There is not a single one. There might be some that you think are accessible, but if they are covered in pebbles, if they are covered, they're not accessible. I've done a full workout of a playground that could be fully inclusive, but there's just nowhere here in town that is wanting to put that in. So things like that. I live on 9th Street. There's no sidewalks on 9th Street once you get to a certain part. There never has been. I lived there 16 years. So, and there's never been talk so far. I think we're on a 6-year plan that we've been on for quite longer than 6 years. So those things are the things that me personally as a citizen would love to see our money spent toward. I would love to be able to see the ADA community in this town go somewhere safe, somewhere they can play with their families. A full inclusive playground doesn't mean just for kids with special needs. It means everybody. Grandparents can get out there and play with their grandchildren. Kids who are blind can have something to do in these parks. We have nothing like that here except for the schools. But once the schools are in session or they have kids club, we're, as a public, are not allowed on those properties. So where do the kids that aren't in those schools play? There's nowhere for them to go. So consider things like that when you're choosing where to put our money. I don't think a golf course is where it needs to be placed. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. If anybody else wishes to speak.
I don't want to speak again. Terry Woods, 902 North Henry. I would just like you to read Jerome Windiger's email into the record, please.
Motion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is very short. Morgan Greenwood, 1615 West 2nd. Plan to say anything?
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I did not get your name.
Morgan Greenwood?
Morgan Greenwood?
Yes.
Thank you.
I hadn't planned to say anything, but I was end up doing that, so. There's just belief that we can try to participate, we can come to meetings, we can speak our mind, we can call our representatives. But I think a lot of us, the reason that you, Mr. Lucas, you talked about how many calls you get, and I know so many of you do. We're not happy about this stuff, but there's this feeling that no matter how much we participate in the process, it's still a done deal from before. It's already a done deal by the movers and shakers that we don't have access to. And I know that seems a little cynical, but I believe it's the truth. So I would ask you to not spend that money from the MLNW and not bail out the golf course. That's my direct request, to not do that and prove us wrong, for what's that we do make a difference. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to close public hearing?
Voting on closing the public hearing.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, public hearing has been closed. And since there's no action taken on this item, we'll move on to item number 11. We have a public hearing on the resolution setting the property tax rate for fiscal year 2019-2020. And again, no action taken until September 5th, 2019. And this is a public hearing if anybody wishes to speak.
Motion to close public hearing.
Okay. And public hearing is closed. And that concludes item number 11 as well, as there's no action taken at this time. Item number 12, approve recommendation of the North Platte Quality Growth Fund Citizen Advisory Committee to approve a $20,000 request to the North Platte Parks, Recreation, and Wellness Foundation for a feasibility, market study, and financial analysis.
Move that we approve the recommendation of the North Platte Quality Growth Fund Citizens Advisory Committee to approve a $20,000 request to the North Platte Parks, Recreation, and Wellness Foundation for a feasibility, market study, and financial analysis.
We able to ask questions of the applicants on this? Mayor?
Sure. Megan or Fiona?
Can I talk first, or you want to ask questions?
Please do.
Okay. I'm Megan McGowan. I'm resident of the North Platte Parks, Recreation, and Wellness Foundation, which has a registered address at 601 West Leota. And I wanted to start by just giving a brief synopsis of all the players, because I know you all might be familiar, but I'm not sure everyone in the room or those that are reading the stories or watching the publishing are aware of all the players that are working on this and how we're all working together. So I just wanted to kind of talk through that a little bit. Back in 2016, the mayor started the Wellness Alliance, where he appointed roughly 17 members of that alliance. And that alliance was tasked with looking at all things recreation and wellness related, including facilities and activities. From there, in 2017, we created North Platte Parks, Recreation, and Wellness Foundation. And that was really the arm to help support the efforts of the alliance. So the fundraising arm, or if we needed to write grants, those types of things, that's where the foundation came in, to give people an avenue to give to recreation and projects that are supported by the alliance. In May of this year, 2019, the alliance came to the council and we presented regarding that TSP design study, where we are working on some renderings of the rec center. We're working on a expansion remodel option, as well as a new build option. So we're working with design firm on that. When we came in May, at the direction of the council, you recommended that we create a finance committee to look at, if we were to move forward with any of the options that we present, how is that financing going to look? So in May, we created a finance committee as well. So I know it gets a little bit messy, but so we had the finance committee meeting in May. At the same time, the Sports Commission and the Visitors Bureau was meeting with a firm regarding sports tourism, and their recommendation out of their session was that they look at a multi-use complex that could be used for sports tourism and other activities and events that need a large venue. There were several alliance members that attended the session as the Visitors Bureau put on. I think the mayor, you were there as well. And several alliance members felt that there were some synergies with the two projects, that we owed due diligence, said, let's look at how these projects could live together, and we could have a win for North Platte looking at both projects. So that's kind of a synopsis of who's kind of been at the table. We have the Wellness Alliance. Leland Poppy and Fiona Lipsack are the chairpersons of the Alliance. We have the foundation, the North Platte Wellness and Recreation Foundation. I'm the chairperson for that. And then we have the Finance Committee. Dr. Rich Raska is chairing that. And then the Sports Commission and Visitors Bureau. And Lisa Burkins here, she's the Director of Tourism for Lincoln County. The other piece of history I wanted to bring up was the study piece. So in 2014, we did a study called Green Play, of which the city was a partner among a number of different financial partners that came together to fund that study. That was specifically an assessment piece. So what they did was, what do we need and what do we want in North Platte? At that time in 2014,
Recreation center was at the top of the list. Something needed to be done with the recreation center. Trails came up pretty high. I'm sure playgrounds were on the list and a number of other things, but the recreation center was identified as a priority in 2014. That study was supposed to be phased. So there was supposed to be, the whole idea, the vision was a phase 2 of the Green Place study, which would have been the feasibility piece. At that time, we didn't fund the second phase. That's where we are right now. We're looking at a feasibility study that would tell us, can we have an individual rec center? Can we have a multi-sports complex? Can we have a combined facility? And if we do that, what does that look like financially? What does it look like financially to build it? To build a standalone rec center, a standalone multi-complex, and a combination. What are all those costs associated? And then also, what is the cost to operate them? And again, the 3 options, the cost as a standalone, the operations, a rec center, a standalone multiplex, and a combination facility. What is the cost to operate it today, in 5 years? They look at a number of different things. They talk about programming and all of those so that it's a win for the whole community. It does look at sports tourism as well, and how we can bring in more additional overnight traffic to North Platte to boost our sales tax and the economic impact is also a piece of that study. So this really focuses on the pro forma, the financial piece of that, which we haven't been down this road before. We know what we want, we know what we need, that's been identified. This is the next step. This is that validation that groups like the foundation need in order to take some real steps forward and looking at other funding options or matching grants, those types of things. We need validation from a study like this. So that's what we're here hoping for approval tonight on our Quality Growth Fund request. We do have some other fund requests out there to help fund the remainder of the study as well. So this is looking at your application's 44% match.
I'm concerned about the multi-complex or tourism being, turn that off. I'm concerned about the tourism or multi-use facility being a distraction to getting a rec center project progressed. And the rec center project's been identified as a really high priority. Tell me why you guys don't think it'll be a distraction to trying to progress a rec center project?
Sure. Again, I kind of talked about the synergies a little bit. Some of the things that we've identified as needs just throughout the Alliance meeting are major gym space. I mean, a lot of space for gyms. Well, is there a potential that this sports complex could account for some of that gym space so that we don't need, if we need 8 gyms, are some of them at the rec center or some of them at this complex? So we saw a lot of things that we don't want to compete. We don't want to duplicate either. There are not enough resources to duplicate efforts. So we thought if we were coming along side by side, that we could get the pieces that we need in each facility.
You know offhand what the study cost in, I think it's in 2014?
The Green Place study was around $50,000. And the phase 2, I was not here in 2014, so I've heard numbers. Jim, you might know. I believe the phase 2 was over 50,000 as well. So that the 2 phases were over 100,000 together if we did both phases. Does that sound right from those that were here?
It was 110, I think.
Yeah, so I was thinking it was 50,000 for the first piece and 60 for the second, or the other way around. That's what I was thinking.
So we spent 50,000 and you got a 10,000 grant this spring.
You're turning your mic
Now you want another 20,000, sorry. Don't push the button. We're approaching real money here. And it seems like the community has let us know without spending a dime what we need to do with a golf course. I'm not sure why we need to spend $100,000 to figure out what the community wants.
We've already determined what the community wants, as you said.
I understand.
Did that.
I understand. But it seems like we're going back down the road again of having all government ownership.
This is not a study to determine ownership.
I understand, but when we talk about grants and other funding sources, and maybe I'm reading more into this than what's actually there, my whole intention is to shrink government. I think we've got way too much government. way too much government. And what I'm hearing is we need more government to satisfy the needs that the people want. And I'm not sure where this game ends. We keep throwing tax dollars, money that all of these people out here, and me included, work hard to acquire, and now we're being asked to fund something that somebody wants. And I'm not sure where this ends. I mean, I have a lot of wants and a lot of desires, but I don't always have the money to buy what I want. And I don't know that it's necessarily right for me to come to you all and expect you to pay for what I want. So that's my comment. I have a problem, I guess, with giving more money for more studies when we seem to have heard pretty clearly what the community wants to do with the golf course without spending a dime.
So just say one thing. Part of what they're attempting to do here is put together the 4 different options. And, you know, one of those options that was, you know, that's discussed was what we discussed when you were here last time, which is looking at private ownership and stuff like that. This is just one of those options that they want a presentation essentially that they're trying to put together to be able to present, you know, different options. This would be a probably predominantly government funded or operated option. And another one of those options is going to be, you know, private, handing off. And there's, you know, there's 4 options they're working on. They're just trying to get all 4 of those options so they can present them to us at a later date. Correct?
Correct. The finance committee is working on that as you directed at the May meeting when we were here. That's the primary task of that finance committee, is to look at financing options, and we're also looking at ownership models.
And I've got some of the same concerns that I think you have. I very much appreciate the efforts that Lisa and everyone in our community takes to tourism. But we need to remember that we were given a study of the Golden Spike that I think had roughly triple the visitors of what we're seeing today. That was what an outside consultant came in and told us. Now, I'm a fan of the Golden Spike. I'm glad we have it, and it's going to be paid off in 2028. But I'd rather address items in 2029 when maybe we have some free cash flow from that to support tourism. I'm really concerned about this project blowing up into something that's unfeasible, and now we're 10 years away from meeting the priorities that our citizens need. I'm also concerned about an outside push to move, and maybe this wouldn't be the recommendation, but anything tourism related is naturally going to be probably located near the interstate. I shouldn't speculate what their city is going to conclude, but I have a lot of problems with prioritizing a recreation center and getting that crossed over into a project that's more centered around being near the hotels and not the decks. I don't think that's where our citizens want to have a rec center where they're located. I just think it's 2 different projects, not to say there isn't some go-between, but I think we're going to push. I'm kind of tired of paying for studies too, but I'm afraid we're going to push a rec center project out 5 more years by getting too much of a tourism focus on it, because I don't think that's what our citizens are asking us for. I guess those are my thoughts. I'm sensitive to that there could be duplication, but if we build gyms or space in a new complex, that's going to have a use if we have a basketball tournament and whatnot. I'm just afraid that it's probably a good idea to go look at this now, but I'm worried about a 5-year delay on getting anything done in the town by further evolving what these priorities are. So as much as I appreciate that it may be smart to go look at to avoid duplication, I'm really concerned about the numbers blowing up so big and an argument about locations and different things that's going to cause us to never get to the finish line on anything. I'm really concerned about that.
I think that's part of what the feasibility study will show. That's why it looks at each as an individual and then one as a combined. So it will look at the feasibility of just a rec center, and it will look at the feasibility of just a multi-complex, and then it will look at the combined approach. We're worried about that too. So that's one of the reasons we thought, let's approach this together. Let's look at what's feasible. What can our community support? What should we build? What's not to overbuild or underbuild? All those questions. Those are things that this study will validate.
Jim?
Megan, thank you for clarifying exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. It does seem like we're lifting over ground because we've been talking about the rec center now and doing studies and doing all this stuff for several years. What I'm not hearing, I mean, I see it alluded to in our material we did, but it seems to me that we ought to make a concerted effort at partnering with the YMCA, get something done here. And I don't hear that talked about very much, really.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Fiona answer that if possible. She's been a lot of recent talking to the YMCA. I'm Fiona Lipsack. I live at 3320 Sunset Drive, and I'm the current chairman of the North Platte Parks and Recreation Alliance, along with Leland Poppy. We co-chair that committee. I just wanted to correct a quick fact. Mr. Reeker made reference to funding that was supplied to us for a study in the spring, and that funding was actually privately raised. So I just wanted to point that out and clarify that was actually our committee that did the fundraising for that. So, but larger than that, what Megan was alluding to was really 4 options that we are seriously looking at. And I think we owe it to the community to come back with enough facts and information that we can make a good decision on the rec center, rather than just willy-nilly decide that we need to do this or that. I think we need to have some good science and research behind it. We need to do the financial performance. We need to do the business plans, and our committee intends to come in front of you with all 4 of those business plans and performance completely done, and with confidence. And that was my concern. I didn't want to just come up here and say, we should do this or that. I wanted to be able to say it with confidence based on a good amount of research, and this study allows us to do that. In terms of where the alliance is going, this is the next step. We'll be back up to you to clarify that. I would ask for any other questions that you might have. There was a specific one I just missed.
The YMCA.
The YMCA, yeah, sorry. I'm back on the other part. So the YMCA we have looked at and we are looking at. Currently, we have made calls out to the YMCA on both the local and regional level, as well as the national level. And I will tell you that YMCAs right now, in our conversations with them, are not in a position to grow. And I have personally made those phone calls. We have to tag on to another current existing YMCA in a region, and we have reached out to many different YMCAs that are run in different regions. Not one of them are willing to take on North Platte as a new client. And the way that the YMCA is structured, they have to agree to it. I haven't been able to convince anybody to talk to us. That doesn't mean that as part of our planning, we won't be able to make that happen, but as of right now, I did want you to know that we are doing the due diligence on YMCA, just like you asked, and we'll continue. YMCA may not be the only option. There are other private opportunities that we can look at, and I've got a group working on that right now. So when we come back to you, we will have that research.
I've had a couple of folks bring to me the idea of maybe having a locally owned and operated 501c3 corporation.
Possibility.
That is operated by a local board and completely independent of tax revenue. To me, that seems very attractive. It's our rec center. It's our community's rec center. It's not the city's. The city doesn't have to worry about spending money to pay for it. Is that an option that you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to be clear, though, for the media, it is an option, and we are not in a position to recommend at this point. We are completely doing research, so we are looking at that option. So I don't want to scare anybody with the we've already made a decision. We absolutely have not. It is still in the research phase. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Did we have a motion on the floor? Yes. Yes, we're going to vote. Thank you. Number 4 or yes, 12. Is that correct? Motion passes 5-3. Okay, item number 13. Action on recommendation from the North Platte Quality Growth Fund Citizens Advisory Committee to approve a $1 million performance-based loan to Criteria Ventures LLC. Well, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you.
I move that we approve the recommendation from the North Platte Quality Growth Fund Citizens Advisory Committee to approve a $1 million performance-based loan to Platte Ventures LLC.
Yes, sir.
Can I have some questions of them? Is that possible?
Roger, you're going to help us out here?
Yes. Roger Rollington, 3935 Westgate Road, Grand Island, Nebraska, 68803.
So I guess my first question is, what exactly is Criteria Ventures? I mean, is that just like a company that's going to be coming in an LLC form just for the North Platte projects? Is that something that covers? What is it exactly?
Criteria Ventures is the real estate holding and investment arm of Chief Industries. Chief, we're headquartered in Grand Island. We keep our real estate holdings in Criteria Ventures. The West Hay Market in Lincoln, which would be like the rail yard, our ownership portions in Canopy Street Lofts, the Hyatt Place, and the Huddle Building are all put into that LLC. Also, our 180 acres of Prairie Commons that we're developing now in Grand Island is located in that LLC. And then we did some other development up in Fountain Point, up in Norfolk, and that holds those holdings.
And so on this $1 million, what exact I mean, you're wanting to use it for what projects, how much for what? That's why I'm failing to grasp that. Other than that, it just kind of seems like here's a bag of money and we're going to do some stuff and don't ask questions.
I know it kind of appears that way. We're actually looking at a lot of different complicated type of investment opportunities here with these three developments. I think last time when we talked about it was kind of a three-phase one, which was the Twin Rivers Business Park with doing some spec distribution and logistics buildings down there, and then also some of the buildings on Halligan, and of course the main crown jewel would be the development of the Hayward property. And this $1 million is going to be used kind of as a catalyst to get some of that stuff kicked off. There is an investment shortfall in a few of the first projects that kind of need to happen, and also on some of the land acquisition parts. And so I know I'm being vague with it, but it's kind of going in different buckets to make some of these things happen, and thus trying to beget more investment down the line as we get these other ones, up and running.
Can you break down a little bit? We're looking at $250,000 for this project, $250,000 for the the commercial on Halligan, and $500,000 for house. I mean,
yeah. Right now we're still doing a lot of the investment profiles on the buildings, but on the Twin Rivers Business Park development, we're investing approximately $3.5 million in there for the about 37,000 square feet of buildings. And then also on the two businesses on Halligan, it'd be about $3 to $3.5 million. And some of that's going to both of those projects, trying to get things started, more so on the Halligan part than the Twin Rivers business part.
how do you know $1 million then if you don't even have all that stuff done? I'm going to speak blunt here.
We've got more of this shortfall, more than $1 million, but we've only asked for $1 million.
You guys plan to ask for TIF though, correct?
Correct. Both a TIF application for the what we call the Iron Trail development, or Iron Trail Industrial down on the Twin Rivers Road. We will be asking TIF for that. Then on some of the Halligan projects, we don't know yet exactly, depending on timing on that, but obviously on the Hayward project, we will be commissioning an A-Flight and substandard study on that property to help with possibly getting TIF approved projects to build roads, infrastructures, and those type of expenses.
What criteria are you guys using to try to tip that Baylor property? Because I'm just not seeing that.
The one thing about being blighted and substandard, substandard could be a lot of things. There's several different categories in there. And we think that accessibility, utilities, roadways, cost of development, and then also we're going to try and acquire some adjoining properties and discontinuity of ownership in different entities. That kind of all kind of checks some of those boxes. If you come to Grand Island, see our Prairie Commons projects, 108 acres. It's on intersection of Highway 34 and 281. It had a lot of the same type of deficiencies and substandard conditions that we were able to blight, and then subsequently, put quite a bit of investment in that.
I'm just thinking back a couple, the last several meetings, we had a guy in here just across the canal wanted, get blight and substandard study. He did it by a couple of old rundown houses on there. Those don't exist on that property that you're talking about.
What we'll do is, we will enlarge the TIF and blighted area, so it will not just encompass just the Haler property.
Might address the college.
Oh, yeah. One thing that we're going to try and get the area blighted, which may include the community college and some of the other properties that with the adjacency. And so that's something that we haven't started on yet, but we're kind of getting a strategy and looking at all the deficiencies and the costs to try and develop that property. And those are impediments to development, all the things that I just listed.
What happens if we give you $1 million and then we don't give you TIF?
Then we don't get TIF on the on the quality growth committee.
Let's say in the Haler area, because I think that the development down by Walmart and all DC and all that, that's already blight standard. That'll just come down to numbers game.
Yeah.
But in terms of new area getting blighted and substandard.
In the Haler property and things like this, I mean, it will require TIF to do some of the big things that we're doing. The cost of development these days, to do it privately, to develop roads, to do utilities, bring things up to grade. Years ago, cities did that, and they assessed everybody. Well, now cities don't have the money to do that. I hear that tonight about what cities can't do, where the deficiencies are. Well, this is a part of what they call a public-private partnership, where we work with the public entities with the private investment to do development tools to create investment. And what we found in all of our other investment and development deals is investment begets investment. When we put all the money down the West Bay market, a lot of other investment come around. Same way with what we're doing in Grand Island. There was a lot of property around our Prairie Commons property that was not developed. Once we started putting in a hospital and medical office building and a bunch of other stuff, the adjoining properties started to develop and build buildings on. But also the lack of investment begets the lack of investment. That's why it's important to get some of these catalyst projects to move things forward. And that's what we think is going to need to happen here.
So so this weekend I happened to be in Grand Island, so I actually went out to go just secret shop some of your guys' stuff that you guys do. And I think you guys do a legit very good job on your projects that you do. I haven't figured out what the big building you guys are doing on the south end of Grand Island is yet, but I've seen the sign. So I looked at that, and I looked at some houses that you guys have popped up in the area, and some of your spec houses that you guys built and stuff like that, and it looked like good stuff. I guess my biggest concern is the language on this $1 million is it feels deviated. Like it's there's a little bit of ties that if you guys don't get this done or that done, but it doesn't feel strong enough for me. Does that make sense? I guess I would like to see some of that money tied specifically, to this project or that project, you know what I mean? Like your project over on the Walmart and then your Halligan project, and I would like to see it, like some different thresholds, I guess, assigned. Would that be unrealistic to?
It'd be problematic at this point, because some of the things kind of depend on this as far as what some of the investment dollars we got. Kind of, once this gets going, then we got investors go here and that stuff. And so they are somewhat connected, but they are disconnected in different ways. And so it'd be hard to tie those things together from an investment standpoint. And the other thing with the committee, they did tie that in on the $1 million would be given. And it's not given unless we bring projects to it and get permits for construction.
It's a single permit, right?
That's the way they have it written, yes, in there.
I guess my thought is, if we give you $1 million and you pop up these 2 commercial projects and then the other ones just don't work, then we spend $1 million on 2 commercial projects. And it's not a $40 million project or 45, let's say, whatever range you're talking about of building, it becomes we give you $1 million for a $2 million project, you know what I mean?
That don't work. That's not how it works.
Yeah, it's prorated on the loan. It's prorated to the investment at 10. So if we only do $2 million with an investment, then we'd be responsible for paying back the $800,000 in the difference.
Is this what you're talking about, is the 6-year thing?
Yes.
Notes here?
Yes.
After 6 years, it'll be reassessed, and if it doesn't hit the 10 million, then Tara, if I pronounced that right, has to
Yes.
prorate it out, make up the difference.
Yes. If we only invested $5 million, and that would be the appraised value, like the committee had put forward, then we would be responsible for half of that money being paid back on the 6th year.
Roger, I was trying to estimate what a TIF request might be. And so if I looked at the $10 million requirement that you would have to meet the grant, it's a grant if you meet the 10 million within 6 years. And if I took $10 million in tax increment and you assume that created $200,000 a year roughly in real estate tax, a TIF fund number, and I know it'd be subject to the eligible costs that are eligible under TIF, but that TIF number looked to me like it'd be somewhere between about $1.3 million and $1.8 million for that $10 million worth of investment. So let's say that you went to the industrial park and invested $3 to $4 million, and you went to Halligan and invested the rest prior to the Haler property, and you reached the $10 million mark. The TIF ask, it looks to me like the TIF would back into somewhere around $1.5 million plus or minus a couple $100,000. And so then if you take that, we'd be $2.5 million in essence an incentive on $10 million worth of investment where there's already public infrastructure. And so, I mean, if you translated that to our shot in the arm housing or some of the other things we've done, that would be, $50,000 or $60,000 on a $250,000 house as a comparison of incentive. And so I'm concerned about the percentage of incentive that's needed. Why is, where we already have public infrastructure to both of those areas, why is what could be in excess of 25% of cost incentive needed to make those projects investment viable?
It's just some things are just the nature of the deals that we're going to create, like I said, the catalyst to make the next step for the investors. And so it's kind of like those are some of the first hurdles we need to check, and then we continue on. And so, yeah, is that a high percentage? Yes and no. I think it's pretty congruent to a lot of the other TIF type asks, the type of LB 840 asks that we've done in the past. And, thus far, those have turned out okay. And the big thing about this, what we're trying to do is create, especially in the Haler and the Halligan project, is we're trying to do a master plan community where, Councilman Carmen mentioned was that a contingency on the golf course for us to move forward. And I didn't say last time that it was contingent, that's correct, but we did say it was consideration with the golf course to be a part of that. Now, what I meant by consideration, and I clarified last time, it was whether or not the city owns it or who's going to be the next owner and what you guys do with it. We don't want to have a vacant piece of property next to us, and then I need to go out and sell, tens and tens of millions of dollars of investment in the area when we don't know what's going to happen with, a lot of the acres, to the east. So that wouldn't be very prudent, and I couldn't raise money in doing that. And so that's what all this kind of does when you talk about synergies. The one investment helps out with the other one. Does any one stand on its own? Probably not on this first deal or two, but we think in the long run, it does and it will pay off. And that's what we're asking for you guys to do too on this money, is to accept some of that risk and get us moving forward to create some momentum for us to go to that, that final stage where we can develop along that I-80 corridor. You guys have a great gem in having that I-80 corridor coming right through there. Grand Island would be so lucky to have that closer to town, and impediments as far as developing it down to the interstate. But Grand Island's trying. You guys already have that, and so with some development tools and some public-private partnerships, I think we could develop and build something special there for the community. And you guys got, as being leaders, you guys are going to have the tough decisions. And I heard a lot of tough decisions you guys are going to have to decide tonight. Hopefully this one here isn't quite as tough as some of the other ones, but I'm sure it's going to take the same amount of consideration.
As you probably gathered, I don't know when you came in, but if you've been sitting here very long, you're well aware that we're talking an awful lot about golf around here lately. And most of us are getting sick of it, frankly, but I guess we got to keep talking about it. And so I had a constituent ask me this criteria, and he didn't name criteria, but this development, as he put it, do they intend to hold the city hostage for continuing to provide golf out there in any form, city-owned or otherwise, as a prerequisite to this development? I guess I'd like, and you already answered part of my question, but could you go into a little more detail on, let's say that there wasn't any golf course there anymore. Let's say that happened. How would that affect, in practical terms, your efforts to develop that area? For example, the bridge over the canal and that sort of thing. How, if there weren't any golf out there anymore, how would that affect your project?
Well, number one, it would kind of deflate a little bit of our game plan and our marketing and making a golf course community, and golf cart community. And so that would affect. Now, would we hold the city hostage? Absolutely not. If you know anything about the chief, very ethical, very upstanding, and we wouldn't do that. Secondly, if golf wasn't there, provided by the city, would another reputable company be able to take it over and provide that on a private basis? Or would the property be available for additional development or that stuff? Depending on where that would happen or who that would go to, we would be, it'd be of great interest to us, as far as who is going to be our neighbors and essentially our partners. We can't go and invest a lot of money in there and not know who our partners are going to be with adjacency. And so that's important. But if we're going to sit here and say, well, no, we're going to take our trucks and go home if you're not going to do this as a city, then no, that wouldn't happen. We try and figure out a way to have a transitioning in that property, so to make sure that the planned community, with what we're doing, something else could work there, or the continued operations of a golf course with another entity.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful to me. This may be an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it was part of my the other fellow's question to me was, or a statement more than a question. He said, if that golf course, the fact that golf will continue to be played there is so important to the development of that area, and why don't we either sell it or give it to the people that are developing it? Are you interested by any chance of,
Yeah, like I said last time, we ran Indian Head, I owned Indian Head Golf Course for about 10 years in there, and that's a tough decision. You know, it's kind of like a park. You just don't get much payback from there. So you try and mitigate losses and provide, you know, good service and good experience to your community members and your members or citizens from outside this area who you want to have enjoy your facilities. And so if it would become available, we'd have to look at what we'd have to do, or to help line somebody else up to do it, or to work with the city, try and make sure that a partner would come in and do the right thing, and do the right thing for the community, and do the right thing for their overall master plan development. I know that's not really an answer to your question.
It's close enough to an answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tim, to your question, what Chief is known as a very reputable developer with integrity across the state. I'm glad they're here in North Platte. But if we give them $1 million as a grant that they have to follow through with the 10 million, we've hostage ourselves on the golf course, haven't we? I mean, I think the reason this is tough is because we haven't dealt with the golf course. And that's why this is difficult. If we get this out to the voters, or we figure out a long-term plan for the golf course, then we all wouldn't be sitting here having to weigh that into this whole conversation. So I think, in my opinion, it's a perfect example why not making any kind of long-term commitments or not going to the voters with the golf course is demeaning development in this town, and it needs dealt with. This council needs to deal with this at some point. And I guess what I'd sure like to see is, I'd like to see us consider tagging or reserving up to $1 million for Chief for their entire project. But having that to be determined once, as a community, we can make a longer term decision with the golf course. And secondly, once we know the entire incentive asks that they're going to have for the project and what the numbers look like for the different things, I feel it's irresponsible to take $1 million of LB 840 money and just throw it at Chief and say, please come develop in North Platte, because we don't know what we're going to do with our golf course and we really need development here. I think we need to be a smarter partner in this to Chief, and to try to work this as a long-term, mutually beneficial project. And so I'm really concerned we've got cart ahead of the horse. I mean, we don't even know what the TIF ask is going to look like at this point. And so $1 million is our biggest LB 840 request that I'm aware of. I remember when we were talking about the veterans home, there was a potential for larger. But other than that, I think the next closest would be Hobby Lobby. Is that right, Jim? Which was smaller than this request. And in those cases, like in the case of Hobby Lobby, when we were examining that, I mean, we generally knew what the numbers looked like for the whole, and so the need was apparent, and you could back into it. But I think these guys have a real challenge because there is uncertainty with golf course, and I think we need to recognize that that's contributing. That is probably contributing to their ask, is because if I was in their shoes and I was sitting here and I had a town that everybody was negative about this golf course and nobody knows what's going to happen, you would have to have more cushion in your project, I think, to keep your investors satisfied. I also think it's important to remember too that LB 840 money is TIF self creates the dollars, and this doesn't. This is money right out of our economic development coffers. This is sales tax money that we're saving for economic development. I'd like to see us maximize TIF for this that is self-created by their tax increment first, and then try to figure out where the shortfalls. And so I'm more in favor of trying to reserve some money for Chief, but trying to figure all these other things out first. Roger, is that pliable from you guys' standpoint at all, or do you guys have to have the money now to?
I think timing wise, it probably wouldn't work with some of our investors and that stuff, because there's some 1031 monies that need to be placed that it could be utilized for some of the investors. The other thing about that is, any type of delays kill development. There always seems to be another little hurdle come up to, another little deal. So, I'd like to see us move forward under the conditions, that the committee had recommended, pushing towards you guys. And it's something that we could live with. I feel confident that we'll do a lot more investment than the $10 million. But then again, I'm a developer and I'm optimistic. But, so far, since it's kind of hit the paper and that, I've had pretty good interest on people, looking at that area and wanting to work with us. And so that kind of emboldens me a little bit about how we can move forward and what we can invest.
I've taken a different slant on this. I've sat here all night and I haven't said a word. And I look at it completely differently. If we have a chance, and I'm saying a chance, of getting somebody to come into our town, and God knows we need help, and invest up to $40 million, can't we hold off on that golf course for another year or something like that and see what happens? I see the odds as like 40-2 or something like that, and I like those odds. And wasn't that the number that it could get to?
Yeah, if we fully develop out the Hayward property, it could very well be that the senior living facility could be $20 million by itself. For us, what we'd probably like to see, and boy, this last thing I want to do is get involved in somebody's community's golf course, believe you me. But, either, commit to keep it open for a while to figure out what you're going to do with it, go through a process, or put out an RFP now for it, and request and see what interested parties would come forward and take over the operation, or, the highest best use for the property would be another option, so, yeah, would the first option be kicking the can down the road? Absolutely. But the second one would be, try and solve the problem now and get the right partner on. Even if you do the RFPs, you don't have to accept any of them. You can continue the operation on it too. So believe you me, I'm not a golf course consultant, so please take all that into consideration.
I just feel this is our one opportunity that we haven't had for a long time, and it'll probably be a long time before we get another one like it. And I'm all for it.
Roger, thanks for coming out. I work with an engineering company, and so you guys are our competitors in all regards, and we know that you do a good job. So you're welcome. I tend to agree with Ty. There are some big question marks out here right now that seem to be hurdles to the completion of the project. And obviously, we don't know the answer to those questions tonight. Am I correct that the two projects that you said, I think in our last meeting, could start this fall, are those already in a blighted and substandard designated area, or would that all, or are those projects, are you looking for tax increment financing on those projects too?
Yes, on the Twin Rivers one, we put an application in last Friday for that. And we would like to have them start this fall because there's some of the investment criteria and that stuff. However, with the weather and all the delays of trying to get utility contractors and paving contractors, and that it's going to be hard, it's going to be a push. And so we're going to try and go like heck to make it happen, but we'll know more in the next month if that could probably go forward or not.
So the projects that would move first would be in the Twin Rivers Business Park.
Yes, and at the same time would be the two commercial projects in Halligan. And those probably, although we need TIF on those, I don't know if timing is going to facilitate those, depending on when, you know, if they want to move forward without that funding assistance or not. You know, so that's going to be a decision tree on those two projects going to come up real soon.
Well, I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, but if Ty's numbers are right, and we're becoming a private public partnership with Chief Patera, maybe we should go in all the way and be part of the partnership, and as the project makes money for the next 50 years, we can reap some of those benefits for the city.
If you want to take the risk to do the same, then you probably could.
Well, I think if we contribute the kind of money that you're asking, we won't be taking a risk. So, but anyway, tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your consideration. If there's any other questions. If not, thank you very much.
Rod, can I ask you just one additional question? And you may have plenty of support on this, and so it doesn't matter, but if you don't have support on this request, if the quality growth on the LBA 40 money was used to facilitate some short-term loan while the TIF was figured out and the total project was examined from a more basis to help meet your timeframes, is that even viable, or is this a take it or leave it type of situation?
Probably on the Twin Rivers Business Park, that probably would be it. Yeah, because we need that on that investor needs to get going, and we need for that one. It's time is of the essence type of the deal. We've already lost enough time through just our, you know, trying to work out the details and stuff like that. Nobody's fault but our own, but you know, it's a big project and it's a new area for us. And so if it would just been that project, we probably wouldn't be coming to North Platte. But the fact that it kind of bundles and there's synergies with other stuff, then that kind of interests us some more. And we think it'd be easier to get additional investment through multiple different options rather than a singular option in one of those investment opportunities.
Gary, can I ask you a question from the chamber perspective? Is that possible?
Sure.
Okay. In your eyes, do you have 100% faith that Chief will get all of this project done?
All three of the phases?
Yeah. I mean, like if we go in with this, I haven't seen enough of the sausage being made here. Okay, so
You have to look at the Chief track record, you know, over time too. The company's been around since 1954. Very quality developer, one of the premier developers in the state of Nebraska. For them to be looking this serious at North Platte, I think that makes a huge statement. Someone that's been involved in economic development for almost 40 years, I can tell you these kind of developers don't come along every day. You know, we're very fortunate that they would consider doing that here. We obviously wouldn't have worked as hard as we did to get it to this stage if we didn't believe that those developments were all very potentially viable and have a good possibility of happening. Nobody can predict the future. I mean, you have the crystal ball, and sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. But I think there's enough assurances here because it's performance based that they have to perform to get rewarded. And the potential is far greater for the community down the line. I think it also makes a huge statement in the area that they're going to be developing, that you've got 25,000 people a day up and down that boulevard, the interstate. When they see activity, and Jim could attest to this too, when those hotels were being built out there recently, they made a huge statement. Well, what's going on in North Platte? Why are they building all those? And the same kind of statement's going to happen here. I could tell you from a development standpoint, we work with business prospects. If you don't have an inventory of buildings that are built to suit the needs of what they're looking for, that's very much a challenge. Sometimes you're out of the game before you even start. That's why the Development Corporation put all the energy and work into it to have a business park to start, so it would attract potential investment like this. We have NPPD as an economic development partner. They're going to go to a huge show here this fall. They want to include this development in their marketing tools when they're meeting with a lot of potential prospects out there. I feel as confident as I've felt about anything since in the time that I've been in North Platte to have this development moving forward.
Gary, how many people were on this committee that made this recommendation?
There, 4 of the 5 members were present. Bob Ferris had some obligations that he could not attend the meeting, but it was at a 4-0 approval. All of the members have, are well-respected people in the community, come from different backgrounds, professions, and a couple of people in the banking, another one that's a major real estate developer himself, and a local attorney. So, they take their responsibility very serious. We've had a number, it wasn't just the public meeting, but some of those individuals have met with Chief and talked it through, and during real estate negotiations, we also had numerous conversations. I've personally been involved in this project for several months, going back to early spring. If not, and some of the aspect was started in the fall before Chief was even part of the equation. But there's some really good partners, and I met a lot of really great people in this whole process too that have expressed interest because Chief's involved. It's like Roger says, activity breeds activity or begets activity, and when you got a chief industry involved in something, you're going to attract a lot more potential investors that will come to the table. And we've already met with some of those folks, and there's a real aura of excitement. And I think that's exciting for North Platte in general too. That we get this going, we get several of the other things we're working on going forward, and you can see it starting to click. You can see people starting to get very excited about it. So it's as confident as I could be as somebody that's had a lot of experience in this arena.
Roger, you understand that if the council would pass this based on the criteria that the Quality Growth Fund Committee put together, that we would probably ask Doug to work with your people to put together some kind of an agreement that would spell out those conditions?
Yes, you can get it papered and everybody agree to it at that point. Make sure that, it's fair and what we all talked about and those deal points. Yeah.
Am I able to make a motion to offer an amendment to the recommendation that the Quality Growth Fund Committee made?
Sure, you can move to amend the main motion.
I guess I'd like to move that the main motion be amended to alter the parameters from to the $10 million valuation to a minimum of $5 million before any performance is considered accepted, and then to a $15 million parameter upside, and then also the agreement being the final agreement coming back to the council for final approval upon the legal completion.
I'll second it so we can hear what Chief has to say.
Roger, is that a problem?
It isn't the deal that we originally struck, and so.
It creates a problem.
It creates a problem. Then I gotta go back and get through the whole deal, and then we're back to square one on negotiating deal points again, and that creates timing and that issues. I'd like to see it try and move forward as structured.
It just seems to me we had people that we respect in the community, they're good business people, they put this thing together and they recommended that we approve it. It just,
I'd have to agree with what you said, Glenn, especially what Gary Pearson said. I mean, this is a once in a lifetime chance for our community. I hate to be the one that voted it down and not see it happen.
To explain a little bit what I'm thinking there is the $1 million would stay intact and it would be given with $10 million investment, but they have to do 5 first, which they could be TIF eligible for, because they could go out and do $2 million worth of investment. And we would have given them $200,000 from the, well, we're not doing that for anybody else who does $2 million in investment around here. And so my thinking is that if you put some kind of lower threshold on it, that then it guarantees a sizable development before we're adding LBA 40 money to what will eventually also be TIF money, like in all likelihood. And then by just moving that scale up, it's the same level of performance, but it would take them 15 million to reach the total forgiveness on the $1 million. Now we're getting into a lot of techniques. What I'm concerned about is that kind of giving away the farm a little bit, because we do have a very reputable developer. Which I'm thankful you're here. Of course, please don't mean to offend you guys with my concerns, but I guess that's my concern. We have a lot of people.
We have a motion and a second on.
Yeah, I seconded it.
Okay, you gonna stand on that? We just need to call for a vote on the amendment.
I had second, so we could have a discussion.
I just want to make sure, is that take us out of the ball game then with that amendment? We have,
Well, I would like to have you vote on the initial structure as submitted. You know, I'm not here to negotiate.
That's
you know, yeah, I mean, I'd have to go back and see if that works, you know, which I'm here to tell you right now, some of the first things, there is a shortfall. So making it harder to get some of those first, you know, dominoes go down isn't going to be good for the project, you know. And so the way we have it structured, we think we can be successful on, and like to see that move forward in that manner.
I would also like to see that also, Roger. We have an opportunity here tonight to change the complexion of the entryway into North Platte. And why would we throw that out the window at this point in time? Roger, I have a great deal of faith in you. I've talked to you a number of times in the past 6 months, 8 months. I don't remember how long we've been discussing this. I think this is a good project. I'd like to see it stay where it is so that we can move forward with this thing.
Are you gonna stand on your second?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and vote on it.
And the original, right?
No, this is the amendment that Todd wrote.
So the vote now is on the amendment.
On the amendment.
The motion to amend.
Amendment is
Is a $5 million baseline and then a $15 million total investment, and the same parameters to meet the forgiveness on the $1 million loan.
But before we went,
Pardon?
before we went, Tyler, did you say some other figure before that?
No.
That's the thing. The amendment is to move the numbers.
We're voting on the amendment only.
Yeah, we're just voting on the amendment, Lawrence, that's all.
If the amendment passes, then the main motion is changed. If the amendment fails, then you come back to the main motion.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
That motion passes.
Fails.
No, it fails.
Oh. All right, thank you.
So the main motion is on the floor now.
I just want to say one thing for public record on it. I'm not really thrilled with the deal that the Quality Growth Fund committee put together, but I'm also not going to throw the monkey wrench into screwing this project up. So that's where I'm coming down on it. I have significant issues with this deal that is structured, but because of the timing, I feel like our hand is forced if we don't want to kill this project.
You need a motion now then?
No.
You already have one.
The motion on the floor is to approve. Oh, okay.
So now we need to vote.
Now it's time to vote.
All right, I guess we can move on.
Thanks, Roger.
Yes, that would be fine. Is that all right? Everybody all right? I'm sorry. I'd like to take 5 minute recess.
Where's this boom boom truck? Why? It broke out? Thank you. Congratulations.
Rapid, it's stretched and real long.
I just asked.
I like that baby whatever.
Jeremiah Johnson didn't call you, unless he called you, he didn't call you. Yeah, he didn't call you in the morning. I talked to him, it was after 4 o'clock already. But he's gonna give you a call. He can explain to you. The first time. Yeah, that's the first, the second time would be.
Where would somebody go to live?
It's under
He said, "Look." Okay. All right.
Good.
Nobody has that in there.
It looks like all the money is out in the receipts, so we'll go ahead and continue. Okay, item number 14 and item number 15. There will be no action on either one of these unless council persons would like to talk about any of these. These are both handled in our budget. This was talked about a month ago, and last during the floor, we handled it through our budget. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, we'll move on to item number 16.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, can I have a question on number 15? The council, if you would appease that?
Well, let me ask these guys first.
Okay.
I have a question on 15 as well.
Okay, we'll discuss item number 15. Let me go through this. It's item 15, resolution to transfer surplus fees, $3,250,000 from electric fund to the golf fund to eliminate the deficit fund balance and approve the transfer off operations of Iron Eagle Golf Course from the special revenue golf fund to the Department of the General Fund effective October 1st of 2019.
What kind of motion do you want on that then?
If there's no motion, there's no.
I know, but we're
I don't
talking
want
stuff.
But it's handled in the budget.
My question is to me, there's kind of two items in one here, and the second item being the condensement of the account. And I want to make sure I understand this. So there's been, the golf course has been accounted in a special fund, which is in essence created the need for these transfers. I mean, I get it, the money's already in this. The 3.25 is spent other than maybe what's projected for an operational loss in the next budget year, correct, generally? And so I understand that part, but by taking it and altering the accounting treatment on it, then that would just mesh it into our general fund, similar to like the rec center, for example, or whatnot, is right?
That's correct, but since the council has not approved that, we did not do that. We left it right where it is in the budget this year.
I guess I'd like to see us keep the accounting the same as it is on the golf course, just so we can continue to have consistency in how we see it and all that. I don't think it really changes anything other than I think it creates these transfers that need dealt with that probably nobody wants to deal with. But I guess just so you guys know, I'm against the accounting change, not the transfer.
And we have not made that change in this year's budget presentation.
Oh, it will stay. So it stays that it's not in the general fund?
No, it's not.
So in essence, if I want to know things, we don't need to take any action. Okay, so this would be an opportunity if we wanted to change that, we could change it. Okay.
Jim, I have one more question. The Keno funds are still being used to fund the golf course. And as a result of that, that's going to create another deficit balance for that to account for next year.
Not necessarily, Jim. We need to see where we end up with that here after the last month of this fiscal year as to where we will be. But $100,000 of the Keno money is put into the general fund.
Okay.
But 100,000, Jim, goes into the golf fund too, correct?
Well, the remainder of whatever we bring in Keno does. It was decided by the council here several years ago, Ed, that $100,000 of the Keno money would be put into the general fund, and that's the way we've left it.
Just hot potato, hot potato. I mean, we're taking that money, moving it to one account, and then moving it back to another account, right? Essentially.
In essence.
One thing that Mr. Reiner brought up earlier was the inflation of the budget, but part of that is, I think there's like $197,000 in contingency in this year's budget. Can you explain that? If this is a topic for tomorrow night, or Thursday night, that's fine.
Well, no, it is, but the reason that's put in there is just to balance out the transfer number.
Okay. So just so I understand that, so that's the difference between the current fund balance and the transfer
Yes,
balance?
that's correct.
Okay.
So are we okay with the 14 and the 15? All right.
Good.
Yes, please.
Brooke Baker, 821 Arrowhead Drive. It's a lot different on this side of the podium over there, I'll tell you that. This $3.2 million, I've spoken with Jim yesterday regarding this. It concerns me in the essence that all of this money is the emergency contingency fund from that department. This is tax dollars that 5 out of the 8 of you councilmen should know from all the budgets we've done over the past years that we did together. All of this money is tax dollars that we used for capital projects that were not done. We budgeted for every year, $40,000 for this transmitter, $40,000 for this, subdivision transmitter. It was money that we took from these people to do these capital projects we didn't do, and we put aside in the contingency fund. This money then determined by the state auditor, but we have to have a set percentage in that fund every year. And this money is designed for the city of North Platte to survive in case of a catastrophic event on their own. No more income coming in for a set amount of time. Now, if you're going to take this money out of that account to basically play hide the ball, to cover the losses and deficiencies of Iron Eagle, that is a giant mistake, because there is no guarantee that once that money moves from this account to this account, it's not going to get spent on that golf course. We're doing everything you guys can right now to make Iron Eagle look like it's profitable or look like it's breaking even when it's not. Every other department in this city, including our public service department, Chief Hudson over here and Chief Thompson over here, have to come in here and beg for $40,000 or $50,000 in tax dollars to go get a new truck, go get a new fire truck, go get an ambulance rig. And you guys are willing to just sign off on $3.2 million transfer to make the golf course look better. And I, for one, as a taxpayer, do not agree with that. I mean, there's no surprise where I've stood the entire 6 years I was a councilman here on this golf course. And I was watching this live on my way here earlier, and I heard the comments about, well, if we're going to do this building project, why don't we wait and see what the golf course is going to do? Let's give it another try. Let's give it another year. We keep giving it year after year. and it's done nothing but prove us wrong. Every time we've thought, hey, this is our year. There's no win-win for the giver here on this golf course, guys. That's my 2 cents on this. Like I said, I just hope all 8 of you councilmen, or at least 6 of you, decide not to transfer that money from one fund to the other. I know it's on paper, but like I said, it's a giant hide the ball, hide the shell game. That's the way we all see it. Thank you.
Thank you. So a question on my part. I'm really thanks here, but if this goes through the way it's written, then we're going to be transferring money to pay off this deficit from the golf course. Is that correct, Jim?
That's correct. You know, and that was what the auditors were here about in May, I guess it was, and made their presentation, and that was their recommendation.
Yes, I kind of like to have that $3.25 million there because it reminds us that the golf course isn't working. It's kind of a reminder that this baby's not paying its way. And I think that if we pay this off, even though it's just moving money from here to there, this is a real reminder that this golf course is not making its way. So I don't know if there's any way to change that. Doug, is there a way to make a motion to?
Thursday night will be your opportunity to do that. We're not taking any action on these tonight.
Okay,
Your comments that since this has been discussed, I think many of our citizens think that's our loss on the golf course. Well, it's about 20% of our loss over time. It's like 15 million or whatever that number is if you look at total investment, let's say, in the golf course. And so one thing that this has done by us not determining where the money came from every year and where that shortfall was being paid from is, I think it's created in essence a false view of what the golf course has lost or been invested. Loss maybe isn't fair because we do have a golf course, but I think we have to be careful that as much as it's a reminder, that it's not a false reminder.
Okay. Item number 16. We have a public hearing and action on a recommendation by the City of North Platte Planning Commission on an application Schultz Real Estate Development Company for a conditional use permit to allow 2 multi-family residential structures, apartment complex, in an R4 dwelling district on property located on Pacific Street at 5th Street and described as Lot 2, Schultz Subdivision, North Platte, Macon County, Nebraska.
This is a public hearing, but I want to remind the council members that there's a process that you need to go through when you consider a conditional use permit, and there are 2 motions suggested: a motion to approve the application and a motion to deny the application. I'd urge you on this item and the next item to take those 2 recommendations to heart and follow them as a minimum motion.
Close public hearing.
One minute. Did you want to speak, sir?
Yes.
I'm going to withdraw your second. I'll withdraw my motion. All right, withdrawn.
Josh Thompson, 2919 West 4th Street. I'm sure everybody knows apartment buildings are there. I guess I'd ask you guys if you want to get out of bed in the morning and open your windows and look at an apartment building in your backyard. I mean, it's kind of irritating the people that it affects that nobody cares about. I mean, you're putting an apartment building literally feet from our back fence. It's really going to affect our property values, whether you say it does or not. But would you want to buy a house that had an apartment building directly in your backyard? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Josh, I didn't catch your address. Could you say that again, please?
2919 West 4th.
Thank you.
Motion to close public hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes to close public hearing.
I now move that we find the request for a conditional use permit to allow two multifamily residential structures apartment complex at Pacific and Fifth Street meets the minimum standards stated in the North Platte Code of Ordinances, section 156322, and approve and grant the conditional use permit requested with the conditions that all elements of the application are complied with, and that the conditions that one, site plan and building plans drawn by a professional architect, surveyor, and/or engineer must be submitted and approved prior to the start of construction. 2, the 16-foot alley easement be provided on the south side of the property based on the following factual findings. 1, the use shall conform to all applicable ordinances, laws, and regulations of any governmental jurisdiction. 2, the use shall have adequate water, sewer, and drainage facilities. 3, ingress and egress shall be designated as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. 4, the use shall, in all other respects, conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. 5, the use shall be in harmony with the character of the area and the most appropriate use of the land.
Second. Maybe just one quick kind of question, comment. The property, Judy, today is R4 currently, which would allow a mobile home park, correct? I know we've talked about this prior in this application.
Yes,
Sorry.
in the zoning of an R4, you can do single family, and then mobile home parks, you can do duplex housing, I believe. But the reason for the conditional use was to allow an apartment complex. That's not an allowed use in an R4, which we've had discussions about with kind of the R4 district. So, yeah, but yes, it would allow mobile home park.
Just for my planning commission days, it's important to remind us what you can do in the property today versus Dylan's concern.
And the motion passes. Item number 17, public hearing and action on recommendation by the City of North Platte Planning Commission on an application by Justin Warner for a conditional use permit to allow a wholesale nursery and greenhouse with accessory retail in the A1 Transitional Agricultural District located at 2000 West Eugene Avenue on property described as Lot 1, Miles Administrative Subdivision, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska. This is a public hearing. Yes, sir.
First off, let me apologize to Judy. I called her department, the planning department, in my summary here, and it's actually the development department.
Sir, if you would please give your name.
Yes, I will.
Please.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak concerning Mr. Warner's request for a conditional use permit. My name is Michael Cook. I live at 1906 West Eugene Avenue. My property is located adjacent to the east of the property for which Mr. Warner is requesting a conditional use permit. During last week's Planning Commission meeting, I presented information related to my concerns for Mr. Warner's request. The Planning Commission struggled to address the various concerns and eventually voted 4-3 to forward the application to this body. I believe there are still issues that need to be addressed prior to your approval of this conditional use permit. The first issue, while the conditional use section 24 of the A1 Transitional District zoning does allow for wholesale nurseries and greenhouses with accessory retail outlets, It does not allow for the operation of a commercial landscaping business from the location. Creative Landscaping LLC currently lists the 2000 West Eugene Avenue address as the company's headquarters located on its Facebook page. This type of business is restricted to a designated commercial zone location. It is my belief that Mr. Warner has simply added the proposed nursery to his request for a conditional use permit as a way of circumventing the existing zoning code for the property. I do not believe he has any intention of establishing a nursery on this site and will continue to use the property as a commercial location for his landscaping business for as long as the city allows by approval of a conditional use permit and any further extensions allowed to finalize the requirements for the permit. In researching Creative Landscaping LLC on the internet, I could not find anywhere that is advertised as a wholesale or retail nursery. Number two, the lack of infrastructure, including potable water, sewer, property drainage, and commercially accessible roadway must be addressed prior to the issuing of the conditional use permit. With neither the city nor Lincoln County currently able to provide these requirements, it falls to the applicant to present a detailed plan addressing these as well as other requirements associated with any commercial/retail business. Number three, Mr. Warner's sketch of the proposed buildings for the property shows 2 rental apartments. As regards a conditional use permit, Section 8, Part 28 of the zoning code for transitional agricultural requires a single-family dwelling prior to 1 additional single or 2-family dwellings for the purpose of housing relatives or permanent agriculture workers. Section B of the code only allows apartments in association with schools and churches. These 2 exceptions are not consistent with Mr. Warner's application. During the Planning Commission meeting, it was suggested that there are currently a mixture of residential and commercial properties on the county portion of Eugene Avenue. This statement is not true, in that the only commercial activity on this end of Eugene Avenue is a car wrecking yard located near the Buffalo Road end of the street. This business was grandfathered in when the current zoning codes were enacted. While I'm not aware of the quality of Mr. Warner's landscaping of his customers' properties, I can argue that since he acquired the property at 2000 Eugene Avenue, he has not been a good steward of the land. He has taken a level parcel of land with good ground cover and converted it into an unsightly property with piles of earth, weeds, and ponding of water. There is debris scattered throughout the property and materials stored in random locations. He has parked equipment against my fence, causing damage to the fence. I am providing pictures to illustrate the current condition of this property. Are they up?
No, we're good.
Judy's stuff. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
5th one down, or 4th one down, I guess. No, it's the next one, I'm sorry.
oh. That's his. There you go.
That one.
There's your photos.
Okay.
Scroll.
This is the south portion of the property. Following a recent rain, the items that you see stacked there, the wood, is what Mr. Warner uses to prevent his trees from falling over at that location. This again is another shot of the property following a recent rain. Notice that the earth is piled behind the water damage, and also there is storage along the west fence line of various products there. This again shows more of the damage, also various products scattered throughout the property. You can see a small portion of the dirt that's been piled up there. This is, again, his storage of equipment adjacent to my fence line, which he has had damaged, which his crew has damaged in the past, requiring me to repair the fence. Now, this is one of the piles of earth that Mr. Warner's people have placed on the property. Some of it was scrapings from the property. The other was earth that was brought in and stored on the property. again, there's an additional pile of earth, as you can see to the left of on the picture, as well as the other pile of dirt that was in the last photo. And this again is another pile of dirt that's been placed on the property, showing again the scraped areas that used to be a pasture that's now nothing but a muddy driveway. Again, more of the water situation. And this is the overflowing trash as well as other debris that's stacked near the Eugene Road, as well as a shot of the trailer. This trailer was brought onto the property about 4 weeks ago, and each morning Mr. Warner's crew assembles at this location. I'm assuming I would request that the council postpone this conditional use permit and return this application to the planning commission until Mr. Warner provides an engineering /architectural plan addressing the restrictions placed by the planning commission on his application. I would request that the city attorney advise the council if the city's zoning code allows for a non-designated commercial business landscaping within the transitional agricultural zone. This delay will not curtail Mr. Warner's current use of the property for his landscaping business, but it will ensure that his stated plan for the property is allowed by the zoning codes. Approval of the conditional use permit should include direction to clean up the debris and implement weed control on the property. The city's development department should be instructed to monitor Mr. Warner's cleanup of the property and his efforts to provide an acceptable plan for the property in a timely manner. There should be a set length of time as to how long Mr. Warner would have to accomplish these requirements. However, to allow the current status unchecked is simply not acceptable. If creating landscaping is unwilling or fails to comply with these requirements, then the city council should reject this application in total. I believe that if the council elects to allow this conditional use permit as currently presented, Mr. Warner will continue the current use of this property for at least 1 year without any correction of the unacceptable conditions that exist on the property, and will then apply for an additional year in which to comply. Thank you for your time.
Mary Nykoff, 8909 South Buffalo. I drive by this property every day, one aspect or another, either to or from work or picking up kids. I don't know if anybody's been by my property. I'm not in city limits, but I'm out on South Buffalo. My husband and I take great pride in our 4 acres, build a very large barn, landscape as we need to. I would like to support this homeowner because I know where he lives and he does a great job in taking care of his place. There is no way I would ever approve to be living by this site. And I think approving a conditional use permit only allows for it to continue the way it is. I think there are some, like he said, things that need to be accomplished with the planning commission to see that this site does not continue the way it is. And I would totally recommend that you guys table this for the night or send it back to the planning commission. Thank you.
Justin Warner, 2000 West Eugene. I'm the owner of Creative Landscapes. We're relatively new. I've been in business now 5 years. My sole purpose here is to beautify North Platte. I purchased this property with the intentions of displaying work in the future. I'm not asking for any money. I plan on building this project or doing this all out of my pocket. I already provide services to the city. I bring income into the city as when I deliver products and services to your homes, anybody living in the city, those products are taxed at a city tax rate. I haven't had the funds or the abilities, and I plan on moving forward this immediately upon approval of cleaning up that property, if that seems to be the concern, and making it a wholesale nursery where I intend to sell products and services. those products and service wouldn't sell under the conditions where there's weeds and stuff. But in the future, I want to sell products and display what we do. And if anybody has seen our work, that's what I intend to have on that property, which in my opinion would add value to the adjacent properties, which are the majority. My back neighbor, both my back neighbors run businesses. Across the street is horse stables. The majority is running businesses currently. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Warner, I have a question for you, if you don't mind, over here.
Yeah.
I was at the planning commission and heard your case, and the gentleman's case. I think there was somebody else that spoke also. There is like 6 additional requests that you'll have to do.
Mm-hmm.
To me, off the top of my head, it looks like it's gonna be pretty pricey. You gotta do it does have a site plan or engineering plans that have to be developed. A stormwater management plan must be in place. Fencing around the whole place, a truck turnaround, because that is an awful small road. One thing I didn't see on here was, if you're gonna have a retail outlet here, where's the parking gonna be for customers?
It would have to be out front. That's
And what kind of parking, would it be gravel, dirt?
Eventually I would like to do concrete. Once again, I am paying for this whole project. I'm not asking for money. Probably initially I would start with crushed concrete with full intentions on doing stamped concrete and making it beautiful as if I was in your backyard. And I know they put those restrictions on the conditional use permit, and I'm willing to comply. I plan on having everything they requested on that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question too. So is the request today because of things that you're planning to do in the future, or is the property out of conformity today and there's a issue with its current status versus zoning? I guess maybe in other words, is this partially affix the way the property is being used today, or is this purely for what you want to do with the property?
Well, immediately I would like to get started on the project. I mean, as soon as possible. I do have to, like you said, I have to get an architect, engineer, flood plan in place before I can proceed. But I mean, I intend to do that starting as soon as it's passed. Currently, it's not zoned to run a landscape company out of A2 Industrial, and yes, I am doing that. No offices. The properties, like I said, adjacent, all except for Redwood 2, are already currently running businesses.
So it's a little, maybe I'm paraphrasing you here, but I shouldn't answer for you, but it's a little bit of a cleanup, but you also have a lot of future plans then.
Correct. Okay. Correct. You're right.
So you have a lot of plans. Let's say you start seeing the architecture and engineering and all that studies, and you go, "Oh crap, this is more expensive than I thought." What happens then?
Then I would go back to the city and have to revoke the permit and start completely over.
So you're just gonna keep using the property as is until then?
I plan on doing it immediately, like I said, getting the permits. I have a good idea of what things are going to cost.
I was saying, if your plans, if you can't get your plans and get what you want done with your plans, then what? I mean, what's your contingency? Just to keep operating as is on the land?
I would go back with a different conditional permit. And if they don't allow me to operate a landscape company on the property, I will cease and desist.
Have you looked, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, have you looked for property within the city that's commercially zoned for that type of business? And is there anything available, or you just wanted?
Yes, that I have looked. To be honest with you, to run a wholesale nursery at the price of a commercial property is really not feasible. The profit margins would never be there.
I just have a question. You have to access that property solely off of Eugene,
That's correct. And part of the conditional use permit is they'll have to have a turnaround for vehicles, customers, and also trucks.
Yeah, the only other comment I make is that is a terribly narrow street, and I don't know the design for commercial traffic. I'm not, you know.
So, I currently try to have everyone come off Buffalo Bill. It's about 5 blocks off Buffalo Bill and go back to Buffalo Bill, so they have a very limited time. But truck drivers are truck drivers, customers are truck, and you can't control where they're going.
So you're basically in the county then, just, you're not in the city limits?
That's correct. I'm within the 2 mile.
I was just asking the question, if this road was on a 6-year plan, are they up to what, 1,900 bucks?
Ours is, I think it's Metal Art Lane or whatever
Oh,
that
it's
last
right down.
cul-de-sac is there. It's,
Never.
So this was all brought up in the planning commission.
Judy, can you add anything to this?
Is there anything specifically you'd like me to add, or you just want me to?
Well, I need to know if it's compliant today.
Okay, so this all kind of initially came up because of a complaint from a neighbor. So I wrote a letter that said, hey, are you running a landscaping business out of there? Because you can't do that without having the appropriate permits. That is how it all got started. So yes, would he be in compliance right now in the A1 district without a conditional use permit? No, he would not be. Transitional ag district is really tough, and it's really tough in this area specifically because in an agricultural district, to be technically considered an agricultural lot, you're supposed to be over 10 acres. There are a ton of properties out there that are less than 10 acres. A lot of them are 4 acres, 3 acres. This is an area that we inherited from the county because it's in our 2 mile jurisdiction. The problem with the road, Planning Commission definitely looked at that because that road is very narrow, that all of you are very, very aware of that. Problem with that is in the past, and Jim can probably remember some of this, in the past, the city, the county has wanted to try and widen that road. At one time, I don't remember the date, I don't remember the year, but at one time there was a huge petition that came by from the property owners in that area that said, absolutely not, we do not want this road widened ever. So our issue with widening that road is a lot. We would have to purchase property because we don't even have enough right of way to widen that road. So there's always going to be a problem with that road in there until the city goes in, purchases right of way, makes it larger, that sort of thing. The other issue is you're in a transitional ag district. Some people buy out there in a transitional ag district thinking that it's going to be residential. I've got this big residential lot development. That's not true. A lot of things can happen, as you can see if you ever pull out the zoning code. A lot of things can happen in a transitional ag district that are allowed by right and that are allowed by conditional use. A nursery retail business is allowed by conditional use, if you so choose to do so, but at that point you can put certain conditions on it. Planning Commission struggled with this one quite a bit, and as you can see, they've got a lot of conditions that they put on that. And I think one of those conditions, if I remember right, I don't have that in front of me, but I think one of those conditions was to have an annual review of this.
Yes, it did say annual.
So most conditional uses, when Planning Commission does it, they don't do those annual reviews. You know, they let them go, and until we get a complaint that the property owner hasn't done what they've said, we don't do, you know, we monitor it a little bit, but we don't do it with this one. We're gonna have an annual review. So every September, every September, if it would be approved, there would be an annual review. And you come back with a public hearing to look and see, is he doing what he said he was going to do? The sketch that he provided, that was his dream sketch of what he wanted to do. There's several things in that sketch that would not be allowed. You can have a residential structure there. I think he put 2 apartments or something on there, but he's very aware that that is not allowed in there. So you can put a residential structure. I believe he wants to put a residential structure there. So if he puts a residential structure there, you're gonna have 2 uses on that property, residence and nursery retail type project. We looked at trying to keep him as, you know, as a good neighbor. So he had suggested that he wanted to put some barrier around there. Most of the time, we won't dictate what type of a fence goes around there, but he was very agreeable to, I think it was a brick block fence going around all three sides to protect his screen from the neighboring properties. The turnaround was a big thing that Planning Commission had to, because of those trucks that have to come off of there, they needed to have some place to turn around so they're not backing into traffic or anything like that. Has any other questions?
What trucks, you're talking pickup trucks?
Pickup trucks, semi trucks, delivery trucks, trucks with trailers.
That's a question I have. There aren't any specifics on these conditions. The brick block fence is pretty generic.
Brick block
I mean,
fence that goes around the three sides,
are you
yes.
gonna end up with a cinder block fence perhaps? Would that satisfy the condition?
That wouldn't, I mean, I guess it's pretty vague. I guess you could at that point. If you guys want to clean that up, go
Truck
for it.
turnaround is pretty big.
Yeah, and if you guys want to clean that up, that is your prerogative. That's what Planning Commission came up with. So if you want to say it's a certain type of brick fence, certain height, I mean, yeah. It was meant to be a screen from neighboring property owners. And if you think it needs to be more specific, maybe it does.
The water situation seems to be a problem. Were those photos taken?
Those photos were taken after our large rainstorm.
Considerable rain.
So, yeah, so I mean, it probably is muddy because of what he's done to the property. He's taken the topsoil off that property, which probably isn't a real good thing. And so, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of mud, even if there's just a little bit of rain in there. So he needs to go back in and plan something to take care of that. But a stormwater management plan that's required by engineering, if you're going to disturb more than an acre of property is required anyway, that should take care of that.
Will the use be in harmony with the character of the rest of the area?
Well, the only thing I can do, unless you drove out there, it's kind of hard to say. We can look at Google Earth if you want to look at it a little bit. There is a mixture of residential properties. There's a mixture of some commercial properties. As, I don't know who said it, but somebody said there is a stable out there, whether it's a commercial stable or not, it is a stable where they house horses. There is a, I don't know if you would call it a place where they tow cars. I don't want to say it's a junkyard because it's not necessarily a junkyard, but there's a lot of cars out there on one lot. There is used to be a commercial seed facility to the south of this property. And then there are some residential. So, I mean, it's a really mixture. So to say it's in harmony with the area, I don't think it's out of harmony with the area.
But just the condition of the property itself, is that?
As of right now, yeah, it's probably, yeah, as of the way it is right now.
What assurances would the council have that those deficiencies will be remedied?
The only thing you have probably is the conditional use permit and the conditions that you put on that and the yearly review. Now, if at any time, the way conditional use permits work, at any time, if a neighbor, if one of you would drive out there and say, you know, he is not doing this, you can always turn it into my office. We can take it back to the Planning Commission. So that annual review isn't set in stone. I mean, it is as far as they have to come back every year. But if something happens and there's some condition that was put on there that he's not meeting right now at the present time, you guys can say, hey, look, this guy's not meeting his conditional use permit. So, and I mean, anybody can do that. The neighbor can call in and say he's not meeting his conditional use permit because of this, this, and this. We go out there, hold a public hearing at Planning Commission. So it can be more than a year or less than a year.
How long does he have to get it cleaned up?
We didn't put a condition on that. Conditional use permits are good for a year. He has to start something within that year. If you want some condition on there that says he needs to clean it up in the next 3 months, I would put that on there.
Just going back to the statement you just made, you know, that I didn't realize this was county. But I've got to say one thing, you do good work. I've seen a lot of his work, but what I see here is not good. And I would think you would want that cleaned up so it would sell your product more. So I would think you would do something like that. My big concern is what I've had a couple of constituents call me saying, you know, I think we were considering a stormwater sewer somewhere widening part of Eugene at one time. And they told me absolutely not. We don't want traffic going down our streets. That's why they don't want that expanded. I don't know if that's the way you feel, sir, but I mean,
It makes no difference.
but a lot of the people over there that I've heard from have said, we don't want our street widened. So if we put a retail place in there and we have trucks and stuff, we're gonna be increasing the traffic down that street. That's all my own concern.
I just want to comment, Doug asked a question about the fencing and stuff. This ought to go back to the planning commission. Let's send it back to them. I don't know why we're cleaning this up. I mean, it ought to be them giving us something. Neighbors don't like it. Let them work this out and come back to us. That's my opinion.
I do ask, if you do send it back to the planning commission, can you give them a little bit of directive so I know which way to lead them?
Well, the only comment I'll make is I think Mr. Cook in his letter set out some conditions that he wants. I would suggest they look at his letter and then go from there.
Okay.
And I think there should be a timetable.
Okay.
Maybe give them a couple phases, that in 3 months you gotta have this much done, et cetera, and not wait and just give them a whole year.
I think the review process might deserve some consideration. I mean, having a public hearing annually on a particular property seems ridiculous to me. And so I'm wondering if there's a streamlined way that could be reviewed or something that triggers a public hearing versus just automatically having to have one annually.
For me, it's just specifics. I mean, I could say 6-foot tall fence or 4-foot tall fence. I'm not quite sure about the brick thing. I mean, that's kind of just weird to me. I'm trying to think of I've driven the road, but I can't think of, the fences out there are all split rails and
So you get it.
a lot of split rail.
Yeah, there's split rails, there's, barbed wire,
Yeah,
a lot of barbed wire.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you're talking brick, you're talking
Yeah,
$100,000.
the point of this was, screening. So screening, generally, when you think of screening, you think of, privacy fence.
Yeah.
But I think it was suggested from the, property owner, actually, that he was intending to put brick up.
Okay, well, just some massage language, because to me, I'm thinking masonry work. There's very few people who do that. Maybe you can do that yourself, but brick is just flat out expensive.
Okay.
I just don't think it would happen.
Jim, did you have a question? Maybe this has been talked about and I didn't catch it, but I did drive by the property and it's a mess. But as far as the debris that's on there, that I'm not so concerned about that. That wouldn't be that big a deal to clean that up. What I am concerned about is the drainage. And I see a lot of dirt laying out there. If that dirt were spread out, have you considered what the impact would be as far as where that water is going to go and how it will impact adjacencies?
Yeah, with any type of development project, when they're doing a development project, if they disturb more than an acre of ground, it's required by law that we have a stormwater management plan. So that would come into play in that, and he will need to get one of those done by an engineer and be submitted to the engineering department for approval.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I've lost track. Is there a motion on the floor?
No, there's no public hearing.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to respond to some of the comments. Sure, come on up. During the planning commission meeting, Mr. Warner stated that the water problem came from my property to the east of him because my house is elevated. It's on a pad that was earth that came from a pond that was dug up adjacent property to the east of me. The fact of it is that when they did that, there's actually what's called a swell at the back portion of my property, which takes care of the water off my property. So if he tells you that water came from me, it's not true. And on the front of my property is the county ditch, and it takes any water, although it has never had any water in it, that would come from the front part of my property. The next thing is, as far as commercial development along there, as I mentioned in my statement to you folks, the reality of it is that the junkyard, as they call it, or the salvage yard, predates the code and was grandfathered in. Has nothing to do with the current code. It was exempted from the code. The properties behind my house and behind Mr. Warner's property The property behind my house was allowed a conditional use permit by this council about 5 years ago, based on it being a seed corn storage facility with no commercial sales on the property. Subsequent to that, the owner has shut down the business. Now both buildings, I believe the smaller building, he still uses it as an office. The bigger building is just simply storage for personal items of his. And it is not a commercial operation at that point. The property behind Mr. Warner's property there on, it's on Walker Road, is currently under development. It is complying with the usage permitted for the property because there's a house on the property and they are subsequently building a rather large building on the property. I'm assuming that prior to anything else happening, they will apply for a conditional use permit and this council will have to decide whether or not to allow it. So that negates those two properties. Then the question of the stables across the road, those are not commercially used stables. Doug Peterson and his wife have their own personal horses on those properties. They came to the council and to the planning commission several years ago and asked for a permit to put storage stables up there for transient people coming through, looking for places to store their horses, you know, to water and feed their horses while they were in town. The council and the planning commission rejected that. That is a personal property. It happens to be a large acreage. She does have horses of her own horses out there, but it is not commercial. So basically there are no invalid commercial locations adjacent to that property at this time. The question of the feasibility of that property for a commercial development, the property at 2000 Eugene. When Mr. Warner originally purchased that property, he came to me with and we talked, and I was very pleased with what he said. He said, hey, I'm going to develop this into my personal property for my home. I'm going to put a residence on this home, on this property. But in the meantime, I'd like to store some trees in the back. Do you have any problem with that? I said, no, I don't have any problem with that at all. He said, well, how about, what can I do for water? And I said, well, why don't you put a Sandpoint well down and put a pump on it, a gas pump, and pump water to water those trees. That'll take care of your problem. He said, well, that's not a bad idea. And he says, you have no problem with that. I said, I have no problem with that at all. In fact, I said, how about if I put a gate in this fence that I'm putting up so that, and I had planned the fence prior to knowing he was buying the property. And that way, that would allow me to have access through the fence. And if you don't mind, I'll mow a couple of strips along your side of the fence line so we can keep the weeds down along the fence. He said, hey, I can go for that. Good. So subsequent to that, his folks have stacked rock against the fence where it's impossible for me to get through the gate. So that's fine. You know, it's his property. He can do what he wants with it there. But I just have a hard time feeling comfortable with Mr. Warner saying that he is going to put in a professionally looking landscaping business or nursery at that property. And I don't think that the council has enough information to justify giving a conditional use permit for this property at this time. The road, if you want to talk about the road is on the 1 and 6 year county plan. It was moved up to the 1 year plan last year and then kicked back again because of all the rain and the flooding. It lost its priority. So it's now, I assume, back on the plan for next year. But like they say, being on the 1 year plan of the 6 year plan doesn't mean you're going to get it done. It just means that, hey, we want to let you know that we feel for you. Anyway, so the part of that really concerns me is the maximum width of that road, and it's not at the location in front of Mr. Warner's property or my property. It's 16 foot total width. In front of my property, it runs about 15. Average is about 15 feet total width. That's both lanes. And it also has subgrade problems because it was built as a county road, never intended for the traffic. The traffic prior to the opening of Buffalo Bill ran about 50 cars a day on that road. And that's a day. Some hours now, with the opening of Buffalo Bill, there could be up to 100 cars run on that road in an hour. And that doesn't include the FedEx trucks and the other trucks that now use that road for delivery, heavy, we get cement trucks, we get earth moving trucks, all kinds of different equipment on that road now. And I think the most disturbing thing to me was when the city fire truck fell in the ditch 2 years ago because it was forced off the road. I thought, well, something will get done. Nothing got done. And that was the brand new, the big ladder truck you folks had funded for, I believe that was 2 years ago, maybe 3. And so that really bothered me about the road. But the fact of the matter is the road is crushed right now. The subgrade is substandard for the tonnage that is on the road. I speak from experience from that past life. One of the things I did was calculate roads versus weight traffic contingencies on them. And this road does not supply enough support for the type of traffic that it is getting. I have preached this to the county commissioners for the last 7 or 8 years, and they just do not want to hear it because they're hoping you're going to take over the road. And of course, your folks are saying, don't widen the road, leave it alone. We don't want it any wider because it'll increase the number of people using it for traffic. Well, the reality of it is, with Hobby Lobby, Fat Dog, and Cenex down there on the other end, as well as the motels and FedEx, you've already opened it up to more traffic. It's going to have the traffic no matter what. Anyway, enough of my preaching. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I move we deny the application. I move we close the public hearing.
Negative.
Sorry about that, Brooke. I didn't know you were there.
Brooke Baker, 821 Arrowhead Drive. Hey, just really quick, I've sat in on these before. This sounds a lot like a neighbor dispute regarding this land. But just to speak directly to Eugene Drive or Eugene Road, that was brought up twice in the last 5 years, at least, if not 4 years, about the width of that road regarding 2 businesses that were being put in out there. And the same concerns are brought up. It's too narrow. And at that time, this room was full of supporters for both of those businesses to go in. I'm talking about Pals and Hobby Lobby, saying the road's just fine for all these trucks to go up and down it. Because it was brought up, hey, the road's too narrow. These are bad locations. Nope, the road's fine. This council voted in favor of those 2 businesses. Right now, you have another local business in your hands. If this conditional permit gets denied, I have no skin in this game either way. If it gets denied and he cannot use that property for his business or to create his business, and he has to go find, as somebody suggested, a different commercial lot in town, I'm sorry, but those aren't that cheap for a business just starting out. Okay, we've proven that time and time again. You don't want a local business that's bringing in tax dollars that you guys depend on every year, especially when you're doing your budget right now, so you guys know exactly how tight it is. You don't want to force him out of town. And that's what you'll do by denying this conditional use permit because 2 neighbors can't get along because somebody parked the trailer too close to a fence. They want to talk about water on top of dirt. Go out to South Park when we got that same rainstorm. I could have went duck hunting and wading out in that water that was sitting on South Park. It looked way worse than that did. And that was a public park. Okay? So you can't go off pictures of one of the record rainstorms we've gotten in the last how many years that there was a couple inches of standing water on some dirt. Hell, you guys know where I live. You see my property. I had standing water after that rainstorm. And I got excellent drainage. I'm on top of the hill. So I can imagine how it was at the bottom of that hill. All I'm saying is this conditional use permit, there's enough stipulations on it the way it is right now that cost this guy a lot of money to get it up to par. And it, like Judy said, one of the neighbors would probably or can call and say he's not doing anything and it gets revisited. So there is no harm in passing this as it sits and let him get started on making beautifying that section of land for his business. And not only that, but for the area out there. I'm pretty sure if I was one of his neighbors or somebody out in my neck of the woods wanted to build a nursery and a landscaping place, I'd love waking up next to that as opposed to an empty field. So that's all I have to say. Hopefully you guys make a good decision.
Judy.
My name is Jim Thompson. I live at 502 Prairie Road. We've had the property there from Walker Road. We own from Walker clear to Eugene and had it over 55 years. And that property that Mr. Warner has, I have a pasture right next to him for my horse, and it's the same depth and everything. And I've never had standing water. I don't care how much rain we got. We didn't have standing water in my pasture. And, to have that there, let's just say that it comes time, I'm getting older, I don't know why, but if I wanted to sell that, it would be to somebody that wanted to build a nice home like Mr. Cook has. Other people down the street, they aren't going to want to be next door to a business. I wouldn't want to be. And now I'm going to have one, probably in a few more months, I'm going to have a business guy. But that's something we'll talk about later. But like I say, right now it's an eyesore, very bad. I mean, my horse don't care, but it's just the idea that it's there. And like the street, yeah, it is narrow and it's a bad deal. But I was trying to think of something else I was going to say, but like I say, it's we've just had too much of this people going to an agriculture place, put in a business, they're paying agriculture taxes or whatever, and not city taxes. You're out that. And that be something done about that. But anyway, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Judy, real quick question for you. Real quick, can I ask you a question? If this was suburban residential, like it probably should be, none of this would be allowed, right?
Right. The problem is you have an agricultural district. People go build houses out in an agricultural district and they want the same protection as if they were in a residential district.
We're basically dealing with a symptom of a problem that needs to really be solved.
Yes. It is a zoning issue because these are transitional ag districts that honestly really are more closely related to a suburban residential area than they are a transitional ag district. Problem is it's zoned ag. You look at your zoning code, it allows certain types of commercial businesses, ag-related commercial businesses, landscapes, nurseries, seed sheds, elevators. I mean, you can go through that whole list. There's a lot of things that would be allowed as a conditional use in an agricultural district. And it's unfortunate that there are houses in that agricultural district that would like to have the protection of being in a residential, but they're not residentially zoned.
I'd really like to urge the neighbors, think about it, look into that urban residential and look at it. It'll give you the protections you're seeking right now, and you wouldn't have to go through this mess.
I can comment from being on the planning commission a long time. This area is like problem child number one with zoning. And one thing I just want to make a quick comment that I think you have to be careful with conditional use permits that have lots of ongoing requirements because it is extremely difficult to monitor them. Things change, uses of property change, people's objectives change, neighbors change, and then you're constantly fighting about whether a fence was brick or stone or whatever. That my comment to the council would be very cautious with conditional usage permits that have very many criteria that can be difficult to measure or real difficult to compare in the future. Sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
You were
here.
Mark Wood, 902 North Emory. I don't know Mr. Warner. I was at the planning commission meeting. I got a soft spot for young guys who want to open a business. I don't think you have to worry about if he's meeting the conditions, because his neighbors are there. They'll let the planning commission know if he's not meeting all these things. I'd be a little worried if I was him, having all these conditions. You guys are talking about, doing a big new rezoning plan and updating everything, which I agree with. I think you should. And I got a feeling that everything along Buffalo there, my opinion is it should end up commercial or business. I'm not sure how you guys would do that. And I feel for the people because they're in an agricultural district, but as cities grow, that kind of puts pressure on that, and it's hard to maintain that with development all around. And I really assume that at some point development will start out there on Buffalo Bill. I hope so. We bring in more tax dollars, so that's all I've got to say. It's getting late.
My name's Rand Bauer. I live at 800 South Silver. I work for Mr. Warner. And I say maybe he deserves his chance. He's bought a piece of property that is currently zoned to do what he'd like to do. He's gone through the rigors of the planning commission, and they have approved with a lot of restrictions. If he's willing to put his money, his time, his effort in developing that piece, I believe he has. I hope you'll give him the opportunity. I wonder personally how many developments have received the restrictions that he has received on this piece of property trying to develop it. It has been a very wet season and would be very difficult to do very much with that property, and we all know that. It's not his piece singularly that's got the problem with water. It's all over the state. I just ask that you give him a chance. You can always shut him down if he doesn't fulfill. But he has every intention. He's looked to develop some financing and get it going. Please give him this chance. Thank you.
Donna Trimey, 20 South Bryan. Sorry, I forget where I live sometimes. I just think it's kind of comical because here this man wants to start a business and assuming that he must have some employees, and he's not asking for TIF or quality growth funds, so he is getting raked over the coals and all kinds of conditions and all that. So I'm just saying if he's willing to start a business, and I totally understand why he doesn't want to be in the city because of all the higher taxes, as well as why people also live out there, so they pay lower taxes. So puts a few conditions on there, his neighbors will monitor it, and let him go for it. Thanks.
Motion to close public hearing.
I have a question, I guess, that's not to do with public hearing.
First,
Get a second?
Yes.
Somebody did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I apologize.
Who's second? Who's Jim Carr?
The planning commission has made some recommendations. It seems to me that some of these are rather onerous. Will be quite expensive to fulfill. I wondered if maybe that should be revisited and put some different considerations in there as type of fencing, maybe for one. I'm not sure how much that's going to cost, but I tend to agree with people who want to encourage a young guy to keep a business or start a business. And as a guy that always votes no on TIF, it's kind of nice that I don't have to vote no on this one. So I guess I'm wondering if we can't revisit the restrictions and maybe revise them a little bit to make them a little more palatable and still be able to accomplish the same goal.
I plan to send the planning commission back to them to try to work on that. Clean it up a little bit and then bring it back. That's what I want.
I totally agree with that.
He's just about to explode.
You can go home now. I don't want to hang on me.
I need to go to bed. I go to bed at 10:30. This is like messing with me. But, I have never had anybody send, I've done this for the last, I don't know how many years, 18 years. I've never had anybody send it back to the planning commission. So I'm having, and Doug, help me out here if you know, but I don't know if you guys can change anything you want on there. Planning commission has given you recommendations. If you don't like the recommendation of the brick fence, you can put 6-foot chain link privacy or 6-foot privacy fence on there, or you can change whatever. Am I correct, Doug?
Let me first, if they deny a conditional use, is that cannot come back for?
Right, that's kind of my fear here. If you actually deny a conditional use permit, now he could come back with a different conditional use permit, but I'm not sure that what he is wanting to do is going to do that. I think it's a year, or is it 2 years? I'd have to go, is it 2 years? I'd have to go pull the zoning code. But if you deny a conditional use permit, then he can't come back then for a certain amount of time to reapply for that. Now, can city council just refer it back to planning commission? I don't know. I'm gonna have to defer to Doug's staff on that one. But like I said, you guys can change any of those conditions or add conditions.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm here.
If we table this for 2 weeks and come back to it, give me enough time to sit there and rework some of the words on this and stuff? Talk to Judy.
He doesn't word it.
No, I know, I'm saying, so like, we can work on this. Give me some time to think about it.
I think you can do what you want. I think if you want to table it, he doesn't have a choice.
Just like, to think about like the wording and the verbiage on this. I don't,
Andrew, if I may, I'm thinking the same lines. After Mr. Baker spoke and a couple other people spoke here, you know, there's this and that, and then especially what Ty said about you don't want to put too many things. I mean, it'd be a nightmare for them to control. Yes, we have the neighbors to monitor, so I think we should table this for 2 weeks so we could all sit there and think about it and listen to what everybody said here and maybe come up with a couple things that are really would be nice to have in there and go from there.
we're gonna talk about changing some of those conditions and stuff. I guess I just want to think about those and how they, you know, I just want to think about them further, I guess. Is that gonna be a problem for you?
Just taking consideration I'm a small guy. I mean, don't add more than I mean, if we're either gonna do it or we're gonna don't do it. If you don't want to do it, let's just shut it down and crush my dreams and hopes. I mean, if that's your goal, is do it tonight, I'll wait for 2 weeks. If that's not your goal, why add more than I can possibly do? That's.
We have not,
You're still in public hearing.
That's what I want.
So if we're trying to make it more affordable, I'm all for waiting 2 weeks.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we have a motion we need to vote on.
Jerry Nichols, 1820 West.
Just a moment, please. We had a motion on the floor to close the public hearing, but sir, please go ahead.
1800 West Eugene, Jerry Nichols. I live right east of Mike. The homes we have are, they're $400,000 homes. And the field it hasn't even been mowed since he moved into it. And I don't have nothing against somebody running a business, but it's just not really the place for the business. The road is, like you said, the fire truck went in the ditch. It's not only narrow, it's unsafe narrow. It just drops off the edge, which you guys probably all know.
it definitely needs cleaned up. Maybe give him a chance to clean it up and see how that goes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Close public hearing.
Okay, public hearing's been closed.
I would like to make a motion to table discussion on the conditional use permit, item number 17, until the next city council meeting.
Second.
There again, Glenn.
Only place you can vote twice.
And that motion passes to table this item until next council meeting. All right. Item number 18, we've already taken care of. Item 19, approve third reading on ordinance number 4011, changing the start time for regular city council meetings from 7:30 to 5:30 p.m.
An ordinance of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, amending section 30.021 of the municipal code of the city, relating to the time and place of council meetings and quorums, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Move to repeal ordinance number 4011, changing the start time of regular city council meetings from 7:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. Yeah.
I hit the button. I hit the button.
This ordinance,
Thank you.
this ordinance doesn't become effective for 15 days. That means your next city council meeting will again be at 7:30.
The next one is.
Item 20, claims.
Second. Motion. Your vote. Your vote.
Oh, yours was.
These are all the meeting numbers.
There's a little thing at the bottom down there. Mark your way.